Malaysian 370, contact Ho Chi Minh 120.9. Good night.
Good night, Malaysian 370.
Breaking news tonight, a Malaysia Airlines flight with 239 people on board, including 4 Americans, has gone missing.
From the Hindu scripture, the Bhagavad Gita. Vishnu is trying to persuade the prince that he should do his duty, and to impress him takes on his multi-armed form and says, "Now I am become death, the destroyer of worlds."
Hey, everybody. Welcome to the stream. Happy Friday. It is Freeform Friday today, guys. I'm your host, Ashton Forbes. It's not Free Energy Friday. Why is it not Free Energy Friday? So let me fix my hair here. Basically, because I don't have enough free energy related content today. But we're going to review a little bit of free energy content. And then we also saw the Elizondo, Joe Rogan interview just dropped. And I just finished it. It's pretty good. So I'm going to go over some of that as well, give my input on that, and then we'll call it after that. So we have some good content for you tonight. I can't wait to go through it. It's actually a lot. I think it's more than what I think it's going to be. So we're going to get right into it tonight. Yeah, just if you guys did not see, RFK dropped out today. He's endorsing Donald Trump. So that's a pretty big move in my opinion. If he gave him the CIA director role, that would be pretty wild, especially because like his uncle was most likely assassinated. He may have been assassinated due to like the UFO topic or technology that is kind of unknown to us. We're going to be talking a little bit about that concept later tonight as well. Right off the bat, I just want to say, like, I have never been doing this for attention or money or anything related to that. I mean, there's parts of this Lue Elizondo episode, guys, where it's like, whoa, they're talking about the exact same things that I'm wondering about. And I'm gleaning a ton of information off the interview with Rogan. There's a couple points where I'm just wondering, like, is Joe Rogan wondering about me right now when he's talking about this? It's pretty wild. Okay. So let's go ahead and start with the free energy stuff, guys. So if you haven't been paying attention on my Twitter, I got permanently banned from Reddit, finally, for making a free energy post and then saying that Redditors are mentally ill, which they are. Redditors are mentally ill. Do not go on Reddit. Short sell Reddit. Avoid Reddit. Reddit is the fakest place in the whole world. It's 100% Fed controlled. So we're going to read the post that got me permanently banned off of Reddit. I got banned for hate speech against people, apparently, for saying that there's a group of Redditors that are mentally ill that are stalking me, which there literally is. Like, literally, there is that exists. And they were stalking me in that thread as well, which was wild, chat. Okay, so let's go ahead and take a look at it. What we're going to do is we're going to read that. And then I did this interesting summary today as well. That was really good, I thought. So we're going to take a look at that. In fact, we're going to look at a couple posts here today that are Twitter posts. Oh, shit. Oh, I thought I closed it. Hey, everybody. So yeah, definitely avoid that social media site for sure. This is the reason also why, like, I did not rely on places like Reddit or whatever, and instead on Twitter. Anywhere else I've been doing this, like, they would have found a way to get me banned. And what they do as well is they do this like roundabout way of like getting you banned, where they will ban you for some completely different thing, and then they'll they'll stretch the definition of the rule. And not to harp on Reddit too much, but this is like, I'm going to explain to you guys how the disinformation works. And I knew that something like this would happen as well, where like they look for anything they can get you on. So when they are moderating against people they don't like, that they have a prejudice against, they will stretch the definitions of the rules. And this is why so many conservatives get banned. But you still have these like nut jobs who are like, cheering for the death of like Trump supporters and stuff like this, like openly. Like, for example, Ashley Babbitt, there is threads of thousands of comments of people like thanking God that she was shot and that she deserved it. It's crazy. And that kind of stuff won't get you banned. But if you like defend them and say that's disgusting position, they'll say that, oh, you're expressing hate towards my group or what have you. And this is why when Elon Musk bought Twitter, it was so huge, because that was happening on Twitter as well. Like, basically, if you were left wing, you could go around, bully people, harass people. It didn't matter. You never faced any punishment. But if you were right wing, you would be immediately censored, banned, your account closed off, and even for stuff like memes as well. They would say memes are violent or hate speech, all this crazy stuff, man. So that's when Elon Musk talks about free speech. That's what he's talking about. Now, real quick, we're not going to go into all the FOIA stuff right now, but there was this major update yesterday, and I can't miss talking about it. Also, cheers, guys. Happy Friday. It's going to be one of those nights. So I got 3 FOIA responses. They were like all in the last 2 days. I don't know. They all came like right after each other. I put 3 FOIAs into the NSA. I also have, I think, 3 FOIAs into the CIA, and I have 2 FOIA requests into the Navy as well. So we're still waiting on the other 5 that I did. These 3 to the NSA. I don't know if it was Cy Gunderson. I think it was him. He actually hates me, but I saw one of his posts on O'Reilly Tate's message, and her message was she had FOIA'd the NSA back in 2014, and I wanted my own copy. Like, I needed to collect them all, right? Like, I needed to collect my own FOIA rejection. So I FOIA'd the NSA with the same, not really the same thing, but I said everything related to MH370, and I put a separate FOIA in to say that I want all the information about a fire suppression bottle that washed ashore in the Maldives. I didn't even say it was related to MH370. So I just said, I'll go full screen here for a second. I said, I want all the information you have on a fire suppression bottle. Like, if there's a fire suppression bottle that's not related to MH370, there's absolutely no reason not to give me information about what they know about that bottle. They should have some documentation that says, like, this was found by so-and-so, and they can just, black that all out and say it turned out, it was used to, it turned out not to be a fire suppression bottle from a Boeing 777, or turned out not to be related to MH370, which is what the Malaysian government said. Now, the genius part about this is, like, there's no reason to reject this. It's not even necessarily related to MH370 unless it really is. And then my third request was to put in a request for regicide anon. I thought, oh, wow, I wonder if the NSA collected information about YouTube channels. Google's an American company. I think they'd been bought out at that time in 2014. So, what if maybe the NSA has documentation on regicide anon? So what happened to all of these? Here we go. All 3 of them were rejected. The fire suppression bottle and the MH370 one, they used this exemption under Executive Order 13526. This is related to President Obama, 2009. He loosened FOIA loosened FOIAs, except for he left a bunch of exemptions in place. This one's for Section 1.4/C, intelligence activities, including covert action, intelligence sources or methods, or cryptology. Now, to me, when I look at these 3, like, what would a fire suppression bottle be kept secret for? Why would a plane that went missing be kept secret for intelligence purposes? To me, the one that you look at is covert action here, because the United States publicly didn't help out the investigation whatsoever. So if they knew information, then they're hiding it. So maybe you could say intelligence sources, but if you're hiding intelligence sources, that means you saw something. Otherwise you just say you don't have anything. So, and especially about the fire suppression bottle, because the fire suppression bottle, I didn't even specify MH370. So this, to me, like, the fire suppression bottle one is probably the strongest evidence, in my opinion, that they're hiding it. And without a doubt, though, we can say, just based on the FOIA requests and the surveillance capabilities in general. The United States government, absolutely 100%, no doubt, knows exactly what happened to this plane. Even if you don't think the MH370 videos are real, the United States government, they know. They know what happened to this plane. No chance they don't know. Now, the regicide anon was really weird. They rejected this one as well. And the major context is to be kept secret in the interest of national defense or foreign relations under this section 3.6, which basically says refuse to confirm or deny the existence or non-existence of a requested record whenever the fact that their existence or non-existence itself is classified. This is basically saying, like, something happened with this account and we can't even bring it up, because if we bring up the fact that we have it, it proves that the videos are real. Because otherwise, why would the NSA have information about the regicide anon account? So do you see what I'm saying here? They have a special exemption literally to request things, because if they gave you any information, even if they say, no, we don't have it, that would give you information that would tell you that they're not tracking regicide anon. So this is very bizarre. Like, they just have this weird catch-all, because the question here then is, like, you could just say this about anything all the time and reject literally every single request. So this would, but I imagine that there's like a narrow circumstance in which this can be used. So I actually expected them to say they had nothing on regicide anon. I actually expected to come back and say, we have found nothing on regicide anon. That's just a random YouTuber channel. So the fact that they had this weird detailed response is bizarre to me. Why is all this information classified about MH370? Why is a Boeing 777 fire suppression device found in the Maldives that Malaysia literally went on the record and says not related to MH370? Why is that classified? Why is information about a random anonymous YouTube channel classified? Now, I'm not going to go into details on the regicide anon part right now, but if you actually look at the regicide anon one as well, it doesn't make any sense, because there's no regicide anon is just an anonymous handle. Like, it's not even it's not like if I was like, hey, give me all the information about Ashton Forbes. Like, regicide anon is just a random anonymous YouTube handle. Why would you not be able to give me the information about that? So anyway, this was very bizarre. That's why I think that's a pretty big deal. Now let's get over to the free energy stuff. So I made a post about free energy on Reddit. People say, why do you post on Reddit? Why do you post on Reddit? Because I don't know. I hadn't posted on Reddit in like 6 months or more, something like that. And I just thought, you know what? I haven't posted anything about free energy on Reddit. Let's see what happens. And I actually expected the free energy stuff to get like downvoted to oblivion. And I walked away from my phone and I came back a few hours, like 3 or 4 hours later, and it was like near the top, if not at the top of the conspiracy subreddit. So that actually surprised me, because my thought process, I'm going to switch over to full screen. My thought process on the Reddit post was, oh, I'm just going to post like the science. Like, I'm going to explain how it's possible exactly. And I was like, I also want to explain how it can be suppressed as well. Because a lot of people just think, well, if you have free energy, you can become a trillionaire. Or you should be on CNN showing it off. Or you could just prove it by taking a video. Nobody believes a video either. And so the other thing I want to say too real quick is that there are two aspects to over unity. It is not as simple as like, here's a Lego manual, just piece it together and then you're good to go. Like, you actually have to understand electrical engineering, and there's something called the front end of it, which is the actual just piecing it together. But then you also have your electrical circuit, and there's a lot of different ways to design an electrical circuit. That's as far as I feel comfortable talking about on the stream. But that's what I want to say to people is that, like, for example, if you guys remember the Haddam, there's one video that claims to debunk the Haddam magnetic motor. And it doesn't even show, it literally doesn't even show you what their circuit design is at all. They literally just strapped a motor to some magnetic motors and told the motors to start spinning it. And what did? They spun it. And then they go, well, this didn't produce excess energy. Well, because you haven't even configured it to. If you don't configure it to over unity, of course it's not going to produce over unity. Are you kidding me? It's like if I hold my umbrella upside down, why isn't it stopping the rain? Well, because you're not holding it correctly. You're not doing it right at all. And then you just claim something's debunked. Like, this is how easy it is to debunk free energy stuff, because people don't even understand the basics of energy. Sad. Okay. So, and then the other piece of this, and we're going to jump right into this, is that when it comes to free energy, guys, like like I've had people out there challenging me. Actually, somebody I'm just gonna name Jeremy Reese has challenged me. I don't know why. He seems to be like in this very aggressive mood in general. Um, I don't know if he wants to come on my show. If he's noticed, I haven't really done a lot of Hard Truths podcasts, so it's nothing personal for against anybody. But I think there's a lot of people out there that they want to see one-on-one and they want to be convinced. But the truth and the reality of free energy is that you need to understand the concepts first. So what I want to tell you guys right now is that nobody has told me what to think over the last 9 months that I've been researching this. Nobody. In fact, I had a rule early on that if anybody came to my DMs trying to tell me what to think, either on Discord or in my Twitter thing, you got blocked or at least, muted, booted, whatever. And it happened in the early days a lot. So even with regards to the science, I just followed the clues wherever they led me. And that's why some of you guys, like some people out there were like, hey, why are you doing this free energy stuff, Ashton? I don't like this. You should stay in your MH370 lane. Because guys, I'm just following the clues. I'm just following them. And where they led was free energy. Simple as that. I'm not like trying to, shift into a new topic for attention or anything like that. Because one of the things that is going to get talked about at the Lue Elizondo thing is that there was a revelation where people realized all these things are tied together. It's all because of a common understanding of physics, this idea of 0 point energy. That's where all of them come together. That's where the free energy comes from, the gravity manipulation, the space-time manipulation, even like EM drive. They're all tied to that same thing. So it's not really a matter of me shifting into it. It's just a matter of this is where the science has led to. And this is important because the science led me to Eric Davis and Hal Puthoff and Tom Bearden and these other guys. And I think these guys knew each other. I mean, I know Eric Davis and Puthoff do. They're writing papers together all the time. It led me to these guys' science. And I've concluded their science is legit, 100% legit. They have the credentials. They've been in secret projects. The science checks out mathematically relative to Einstein's relativity. This is it, right? So what I was getting at is that people need to come to their own conclusion. So when I teach free energy and this physics to people, the very first step, you have to figure it out for yourself. That's the first step. I know that seems difficult, but that's the reality of it, is that when you get into a mindset where you look at the universe in that way, where everything is potentially more based on electrostatics than anything else, and that gravity can be manipulated because we're at an equilibrium and we just raise it and lower it. Once you look at it like that, it's like, oh, obviously free energy is real because you're just extracting the energy out there. So we're going to talk about the concepts. This is why I wrote this post, is I want to be able to show and teach people, like, you have to look at the concepts and the physics the right way, and then you'll see how it all fits together naturally. And then you won't even need me to convince you after that, because then you'll be like, oh yeah, obviously it's possible. Hey, Bernie, nice to see you, man. Yeah, I mean, we can have a conversation, a public one. I'm not against it, but it's basically going to be what you're about to read right now. Okay, so I want to read this to you guys. And if you guys have questions, I'm happy to answer them as well. And then we'll do the Elizondo stuff as well. Yeah, and actually Elizondo mentions in the interview as well that all of it's been unified. Like, it's all been unified before. And what he says at one point when he's talking about the physicists, we'll probably listen to it in a minute here, but he says that once they looked at all these observables they were seeing on these UFOs or what have you, they realized it was all connected by a common physics. And that's the exact same thing I literally went through, experienced myself. It was like, oh, all the physics is like, when you're like looking into how gravity manipulation works, you find superconductors, you start digging into some more, you start finding like, 0 point energy. Let me look that up. Oh, somebody's wrote a paper about 0 point energy explaining gravity. And you're like, oh shit, this is it. Like, this explains what we're seeing in the videos. This explains all the stuff we're missing in physics as well. Thank you, Starduster. I appreciate this comment. Should I tease something, guys? I don't like to tease things that haven't been yet, but I have had a couple people reach out to me. I'm not going to spoil and show the DMs or anything like that. We'll see if this stuff works out, what have you. But end of the day, like, this is never going away. This is never going away because it's science and it's physics, and the plane is still missing 10 years later. So we'll see. Okay. Oh, We're not going to read it on Reddit because I don't want to give them any. But here, I'm going to show you guys the ban I got before we read this. Basically, this is just copy and paste, and it says permanently banned for hate. Somebody reported your comment. I'm like, what did I say that I deserve to get banned for hate over? And then blah, blah, blah. Community not attacking, marginalizing vulnerable groups of people. We don't tolerate promoting hate based on identity or vulnerability, and any communities or people that engage or incite violence or hate towards marginalized or vulnerable groups will be banned. Like, what? When I read that explanation, I'm thinking, like, did I say tranny or something? Or like, what? I didn't, I'm not transphobic or homophobic. I'm not anti-Semitic. I'm not racist. Like, I couldn't think of anything that this could be justified, because this is clearly meant for like racism and stuff like that, right? Like, that's what you just read this comment. And I go click on the link and I scroll down. You can see here's my post. And somebody, this comment that was removed, I kind of remember it. It was something like, you have this weird group of people stalking you and like downvoting your stuff and what have you. And I looked around through the comments, and there's a bunch of people being like, Ashton Forbes is a fraud. He's a scammer, blah, blah, blah. I'm like, holy shit, what is wrong with people, dude? And so I make this post. Nothing. These Redditors are just mentally ill. There's a literal disinformation campaign being run against me for checks notes, explaining how science works to people for free. That's literally all I've done for 9 months. It's pretty wild. Ask yourself, who doesn't want this to read, doesn't want you to read this information, right? That's what I got banned for hate for? That's a ban for hate? What? Permanent ban? I'm on the bigot list, guys. If you don't understand that inside joke. Yeah, what's the only way this even makes sense is if the Redditors are identifying themselves as mentally ill. Like, the only way this makes any sense is that the Redditors like, yes, we're mentally ill, and you're like, don't you get that it's just like kind of a tongue-in-cheek reference and joke here? Not literally saying that you guys are psychological, but maybe maybe they are. Like, that's the issue, right? Okay. Anyway, weird, man. So let's read the thread that got us banned. Kind of weird, huh? Oh, yep, you got Big Pooh. You're so arrogant. You're too arrogant. When I think back to that, if you guys don't know that reference that he's that Big Pooh's saying right here, the "you're so arrogant," like, this is where Julian Dory let the mask slip. He's one of the guys that I went in person and did a podcast with out in Jersey. He let the mask slip in this space. We did this space after I was with those guys, because there was a bunch of people like, these guys are like setting you up with the CIA and all. Like, they definitely got told by the government to like try to rip on you, right? And they might have, honestly. They probably don't even know it. But Julian Dory let the mask slip afterwards, and he was practically crying in the space. You can actually go watch the live stream from like last November. It's still in my live streams. It's one of the funniest things ever. And he just starts yelling, "You're so arrogant. You're so arrogant. Listen to him." Dude. Okay. I mean, the arrogance thing, guys, is that like, if you're the teacher and you have the answers right in front of you, and somebody's trying to tell you 2 + 2 is 5, and you're just like, nah, it's 4. And they start yelling, "You're so arrogant." You just like, I don't know what to say, man. Like, I'm looking at the answers. There's no way anybody faked this. It's way too detailed. It turns out that it perfectly matches up with all UFO sightings and data that are out there as well, from and scientific papers from engineers that are writing about warp drives and wormholes and teleportation. Like, it is what it is, fellas. Okay, here we go. Hermes was there, so he can attest to it. It was a straight up it was a meltdown. Yeah, like, I honestly don't think these guys are smart enough to be like CIA insiders. Julian wants to be. Like, Julian Dory wants to be a little like a CIA like little spy guy. This is the vibe I got from him the whole time. He's like, want to be FBI agent. Danny, though, no, he's just not smart enough. They would be using him if that was the case. But they do interview a lot of CIA guys. And what a lot of people don't realize is that they're being managed, like, especially the podcasters, because they're like, oh, he's just my friend. And then if I want an opinion on something, I go to my friend. But then your friend gives you the adulterated opinion, the one that they want you to have, right? Like Jeremy Corbell. Sorry, just had a cough. Okay. Here we go. So this first part is just because not a lot of Redditors are familiar. People may ask me, why do you introduce yourself in your Reddit posts? Because A, I want to show people I'm doxing myself. Like, I'm not trying to be anonymous. I am who I am. You can find my content. You can find everything I do. That way, when people are like, who is this guy talking about quantum mechanics? Why does he think he's so special? I'm not even showing you. There's no credentials to show you. It's like, just watch my live streams. Pick the ones that are about science and read them, and you tell me if you think I'm on point or not. Simple as that. That's why I live stream everything. So my name is Ashton Forbes. I'm the guy who's been researching gravity and space-time manipulation. Along the way, I came to a major discovery. Free energy is real. I'll explain how it's possible, the laws of thermodynamics, and how it's been suppressed from us. So these were the three main things that I want to talk about. How is this possible? How is free energy possible? What did I say? Oh, the laws of thermodynamics. Why is it not? Why? Because people are like, no, the laws of thermodynamics say it's not possible. That's not what the laws of thermodynamics say. And then the third one is, okay, well, how has this been hidden from us? Like, where's your device? Blah, blah, blah. Okay, here we go. Space is not empty. That's where we have to start with people. Richard Feynman said there's enough energy in the area of a coffee cup to vaporize all the Earth's oceans. There are 0-point fluctuations all around us. This is not just theory, it's experimentally proven. The Casimir effect shows a negative energy pressure differential by placing two conductive plates close to one another. So that right off the bat, guys, this is why this is so important. The very first thing mainstream physicists struggle with, I know you guys want me to press that message button, but it's not happening, chat. It's not happening. The very first thing, in fact, I'm even going to make this smaller. There, yeah, exactly. There we go. The very first thing physicists will tell you, the mainstream ones, is, well, yes, there's 0-point energy, but it's not enough to extract from. It's not enough to extract from. Bullshit. Yes, it is. Yes, it is enough to extract from. The very low number that I've seen thrown around out there, like minuscule, is actually disproven by the Casimir effect itself. Because the Casimir effect itself is like 10 orders of magnitude stronger than that tiny amount of energy. So the fact that two plates will just come together at all, that's already just enough proof that there's something there and it's not nothing at all. And then the other thing that you have to tell people is dark energy. Physicists will say, well, there's 60% of the world out there is dark energy. Well, one of these guys, and we'll watch this video right afterwards on this, one of these scientists said, oh, well, it's basically the same as negative energy. Like, they calculated it and they determined that the dark energy must be negative energy, and we just call it dark energy now. Exactly. It is negative energy. You're in the ocean. So if you remove this energy that's below, the water level is all negative. That's negative energy. That's below the zero equilibrium point. Everything above is positive. You got to think about it in terms of like waves in the ocean. And when you look at it like that, then you realize, oh, okay, there is energy that's out there to be gotten. So Sakharov in 1968 first proposed 0-point energy could explain gravity itself. And when we're talking about gravity, we're talking about the vacuum. We're talking about how do you manipulate the vacuum? Well, gravity is the flows of energy that you've got going on in space-time are what's causing the gravity. That's what's causing the pull and the push. Then Puthoff came in. Oh, yeah, and the other important part here is that E equals mc squared, which means that mass is energy. So why is this very important, guys? If mass is energy, then we don't need negative mass, because at the end of the day, energy is just energy. We just call it positive and negative because it's above and below the equilibrium point. But it's still just the same energy on either side. So what does that mean? That means there isn't negative mass. There isn't some mythical purpley goo that's like negative mass that's out there. We already know there's particles and antiparticles, and those can collide and release photons, virtual particles. So what that means then is that we don't need the mass. So Puthoff in 1989, with this paper that I listed right here, shows mathematically that this conclusion is consistent with Einstein's general relativity. And when I say that, I mean he showed the math. The math checks out. If anyone wants to fact check the math, go for it. Nobody will. Gravity is an induced effect based on the 0-point energy fluctuations. Instead of the vacuum being empty, it's a baseline 0-point fluctuation level. This means it can be lowered by shielding the ZPF in an area, the Casimir effect, so we can produce negative energy. It's not an exotic substance, just a reduction from the baseline. remove the ZPF in front of you, and you would fall forward. So if you make a negative energy laser, you're going to flow through it. The energy must go somewhere. So if you squeeze the vacuum, the other side inflates. This is the basis for free energy. If you're squeezing this side, you're going to get something else somewhere else. Okay? This is why free energy is possible. Everybody says, hey, Ashton, why are you all in on free energy? Because this squeezing effect is gravity manipulation and it's free energy. All in one. This something is called the dynamic Casimir effect, which shows that we can capture virtual photons, those photons that are annihilating, capture them and pull photons out of them, extract the photons from them, essentially pulling them out of the equilibrium, basically taking the water out of the bottom. We can actually do that. There's also something called Casimir cavities. Garrett Model, I think it's of University of Colorado, Professor Emeritus, hopefully I'm saying that word right, has been experimenting and the scientific community has completely ignored him. He has a method that can scale down into a microchip that can seemingly extract energy from the vacuum. So what does Garrett Model do? I will put very simple. He makes a Casimir cavity, a conductive material, a inductor, and then another conductive material. And what does this design do? It creates an asymmetry. So I don't know. I have to research it a little bit more, so I may be saying this incorrectly. But it allows some electrons to tunnel the gap, and then you have a different amount of electrons on one side or the other. This creates a circuit. Because the moment you have an asymmetry, now you're going to create this circuit where the electrons are trying to flow. And that's what causes current. That's what causes power to be generated, that asymmetry. So if you're doing that and you can then extract that energy and you've created a current by just having your design, you just make something very simplistic, very simple design that causes a current. You've created your you've kept your dipole open. That's keeping your dipole open. So if you can have a permanent design, it's like a one-way valve, right? Basically, yeah, Evan, good. Evan's been out here learning, chat. It's like a one-way valve. The smaller you make it, like this size, the better. You don't want a big, giant, clunky device. I want something tiny. I want to take the principles of how it works, and I want to exploit them to their extreme. Remember, when I talk about magic cards, the way you make a good deck in magic cards is not just putting all your favorite cards in a deck. You make something that's going to exploit the rules. It's going to play the game on another dimension that nobody else is playing on. So that's what we're trying to do with this as well. And I think Garrett Model figured that out. So then the question is, well, where does energy come from? I would argue that all energy comes from the 0-point energy fluctuations and from the field. We're always dipping into the ocean every time. I refer to it as the ether because that's what scientists who came before us called it. If you don't believe this, then check out the Veritasium video on YouTube about power not flowing through the wires. Strongly recommend you guys check this out if you have not seen this. This Veritasium video is probably the most important electrical engineering video I've seen on YouTube before. And why? Because it's the first time you realize that power is flowing through fields. It's not flowing through the wires. It's flowing through fields. And the moment you're like, wait, it's flowing through fields, through the air, which is supposed to be a resistor or an insulator. And you're like, okay, well, why is it doing that? Why is it not flowing through the wires like I thought it would? And this opens the door then to this idea that the energy is just coming from radiating outward from the dipole itself. A bunch of YouTubers tried to debunk it. They all ended up looking like fools. It turns out that electrical engineers and actually even electricians, a lot of them, my guess is over 50%, don't even know where energy comes from or how it works. The other thing real quick I want to point out is that power plants, look up how a nuclear power plant works. It's extremely indirect. A lot of people have this concept that like, oh, with nuclear power, we're like splitting the atom and then using the energy that comes out of it. We're basically just putting hot rods into water, letting the water boil, having the steam come off the water, and then spinning a turbine, which at the end of the day, spinning the turbine is just spinning a crank on a generator. You're like, wait, why is the path so indirect to the energy? Why is it not more direct than that? And this is the rub when it comes to energy. We're not doing energy in an efficient way. And all sources of generated energy are basically that same exact method. So Tom Bearden said that all the coal, oil, nuclear, solar, and wind never added 1 watt to the power line. He's correct. Energy flows when we create a dipole, an asymmetry of the charges, like a battery. All power generation we have pretty much just turns a generator. And that just creates your battery, your dipole. That's all the generator's doing. We've been generating energy the hard way, like pushing a swing nonstop, instead of at the peak at the backswing. We should just be focused on ways to keep the dipole open instead of constantly rebuilding it. Magnets immediately come to mind because they're permanent dipoles. This is probably why magnets are a staple in free energy devices you see. Many people have been brainwashed and thinking the laws of thermodynamics mean free energy is not possible. But that's simply a lack of understanding those laws. The first law of thermodynamics states that energy cannot be created or destroyed. In this case, we're simply borrowing it from the ether. The energy has always been there. Dark energy is negative energy, which is the equilibrium in space-time. There's no violation of conservation of energy. The second law of thermodynamics is more complicated, but generally applies to closed systems. If we open our system up to the universe itself, then we don't violate the second law. Windmill is a closed system. It can't produce energy, but once you add the external input of wind, then it can. This is similar to opening your over unity system up to the 0-point energy fluctuations. Only the 0-point energy fluctuations are unlimited. Therefore, there's no violation of the second law either. The moment somebody else made a good post about you should look at the universe as one giant open system where entropy, the heat that's coming off, is eventually going back into that system. It's leaking back into it. Imagine Hawking radiation. Why is the black hole radiate energy? How does that energy escape? What if it's just dissipating and back into the ether, and then we pull the energy out of the ether, and it's just in a constant, like the water table on Earth. You drink the water's not gone when I drink this. I urinate it out later on, and then it rains down from the sky or whatever, right? Not all free energy devices are legit, especially when it comes to magnetic-based motors. You need to be careful because there's not just a front-end applications, but also back-end ones that need to be met, aka the design of the circuit. This is why you'll sometimes see recreation attempts that claim they don't work. That's because if you don't understand the science, you almost certainly fail. Cold fusion, known as low-energy nuclear reactions, is a form of free energy. That's why fusion generators are claiming over unity. We don't need temperatures as high as the sun to produce fusion. Also, exotic vacuum objects, guys. Exotic vacuum objects are also just fusion, low-energy nuclear reactions, ball lightning. Based on the above scientific concepts, free energy devices should exhibit common phenomena. Coefficient of performance greater than 1 means more energy out than you're getting in. Though this doesn't mean it has to be zero input. Input is fine as long as the total energy output is higher. There needs to be a cooling reduction because when you extract energy from the environment, the energy cools down, or the environment cools down. There's also a mass reduction effect since 0-point energy is related to gravity. So if you're removing the 0-point energy there, you're creating a negative pressure differential, which is going to cause anything in there to be lighter than the stuff that's on the outside. If you want to learn more, I suggest Bendini. It's John Bendini, right? And John Cyril. And John, is it all Johns? John? I think it might be. Anyway, check out Bendini, Cyril, Hutchinson, and then Tom Bearden. So these are people who I can't say 100% their devices work, but these are the ones that I trust based on like who they've interacted with. It's really John, and a Tom. Yeah, check out John, and a Tom, guys. So how has this been suppressed? This is where we have to be blunt, guys. This has mostly been suppressed because humans are idiots. We're idiots. We're living in idiocracy. As I said, we've been brainwashed into thinking it's not possible, and that belief is extremely powerful. So this is the same idea as in idiocracy. They believe that they have to water their plants with Mountain Dew because it's got the nutrients that plants crave. And anybody else that comes in is like, don't do that. They're like, you're a monster. You're spreading misinformation, right? This is the scary part. I found a guy who testified against free energy inventors, and he never once reviewed the devices. What was that guy's name? I don't even remember that guy's name. I don't really want to say it. I mean, he doesn't really deserve to have his like whole legacy be destroyed, but it is pretty monstrous, man. If you were holding back free energy and you wouldn't even look at the devices, you would just go and testify that the laws of thermodynamics say they're not possible, and people like actually had like negative consequences happen because of that. That's fucked up, man. He would just give expert opinion in court and their claims that the claims were not possible because he knew the laws of thermodynamics. That guy was an actual PhD at University of Maryland as well. That's a true story, by the way, guys. If you doubt any of this, look up how many people were convinced wearing a loose piece of cloth on their face would protect them from a submicroscopic virus. We're dumb and we love authority. So people may say, Ashton, why are you hating on the mask stuff? Because the mask is the perfect example of this. There's even now a lot of people that think a loose piece of cloth on their face is protecting them from a submicroscopic cold virus. It does nothing. Zero is what it does. Absolutely nothing. And yet people will go to their grave convinced that it must be doing something. This is the same problem we have with over unity. It's the exact same mindset. That no, I was told by the authority that it works. You were also told by the authority it doesn't work. Like a week before that, days before that. Were they lying then or are they lying now? You have to take this same mindset to physics and science. People have just literally been brainwashed and told that the laws of thermodynamics say that free energy is not possible. That's not what the laws of thermodynamics say. That's not it. Right? So like it's a rough thing to break people out of because people have been brainwashed into thinking that a loose piece of cloth is going to protect you from a virus. But that's the same problem we have with physics too. Also, they would compromise inventors. Like people would get bought out, shelve their products, just hide the patents with the Invention Secrecy Act. There's actually more patents of over unity devices that I think work out there than I was really ready to be prepared for, honestly. Quite a few. And I haven't shared a lot of them on stream because, frankly, like I just know I'm pushing the limits with this. There's a reason why on some of these posts I'm like, I would never harm myself. Because that's another piece of it too, is like you look at what happens to a lot of these people and it like rarely ends up well for them. If you have free energy and you have the ability to have warp drives and teleportation, anybody who goes against you is effed. Like totally effed. You can just make somebody disappear and make it look natural and nobody's going to question it. Nobody on the world's going to question it. Because go back to the mass thing. Go back to the thermodynamics thing. The last hurdle is economics. Free energy does not mean that it costs nothing. These devices are expensive, and that's the main reason it hasn't gone mainstream. You don't automatically become a billionaire because you invented a device that can extract energy from the vacuum. It needs to be economical compared to the alternatives. This is what people don't get. Free energy doesn't mean free money. You actually have to pay, in some cases, a very expensive upfront fee. What if I told you, well, you're only going to get your money back after 20 years? Now it's not as easy as, oh, you're just printing free money. I'm only getting my money back 20 years later. It costs a lot of money to make the devices. And many of these devices, like I've seen, I'm not talking about the magnetic motors. There's giant ones like the Holcomb device. Definitely hundreds of thousands of dollars. Might be millions. Some of these devices are made for like, we want a company to buy it or we want like the Department of Defense to buy it. They're not made for like random people to afford in their houses. The cost of the devices will go down and we will have over unity eventually. It will replace all current sources of power and give us true green energy. Climate change is a scam because we have the ability to end the problem today. It's not even a matter of the climate temperature going up or down. Just a matter of like, we could end the problem immediately, even if it is a problem or isn't a problem. Or a car. I don't know what I said about cars, but there you go. I don't think British people really drive, chat, do they? Do British people drive? Let's ask Emily. Last point. People will say, well, go on CNN and prove it then. Nah, I'm good. I'm good. I like living on this planet, chat. The bad guys are already pissed enough at me for revealing what I'm revealing. Now, you may say, Ashton, you're being paranoid. Okay, guys, if I'm being paranoid and I'm not in any danger, great. Honestly, great. That's the life I want to be living in. Unfortunately, I'm very sure this technology is real, and if this technology is real, then yeah, let's just say I'm glad I have a big following on social media and I post every day. Also, it's not how any of this stuff works, man. I actually did a challenge with a couple of those engineers mentioned above in the Veritasium video. They refused to take the challenge. All they had to do is sign an NDA, not to disclose the IP about the device and how it works, and make a statement on their YouTube channels. None of them would do it. None of them would do it. Think about that. So this goes back again to the laws of thermodynamics. People are like, just show it, and you're like, okay, I'll show it to you, but you have to sign an NDA that you won't give away how it works. Nope, won't do it. What? Don't people? I thought people wanted to see it. So this is where like you realize how impossible it is. You're like, they'll just yell at you, just show it, and then you'll say, okay, I'll show it, but here's the contingency, and they say, nope, sorry, I'm not interested. Like, well, okay, I guess it's going to stay hidden then. Most British people drive. They do. Interesting. Just Londoners who don't drive much because public transportation is faster. Interesting. For the record with the mask stuff, I'm not even going into like, oh, the mask is harmful for you. I'm just telling you it's not stopping a virus. It's not stopping a virus. Do masks have some purpose? Yeah, generally it's not to spit into people's faces or into open wounds. That's usually what a surgical mask is for. It's just not stopping a virus. Not only is the virus going to go right through that mask, but it can just go in your eyes or any other orifice you have on your body. Anyway. Who's Dirk Gently? Guys, what's a Dirk Gently? Anyway, let's finish this up. We got a lot more stuff to get through tonight. We're going kind of slow. So how do we prove the science? The first hurdle will be EM drive. So you're like, oh, Ashton, like, I thought about it a while. I'm like, how do you prove it? Well, the answer is we have to prove the concept to be true. So we have to teach the concept of 0-point energy, and then we need anything that proves that we can actually harness 0-point energy in any way. And the moment we prove the equilibrium, all these become true. All of them immediately become true. So Charles Bueller has done over 3,000 tests, shown propellantless propulsion. EM drive, Q thruster. There's a bunch of different names. Any of them work. We win. That's why they had to suppress those drives. So back in February, the quantum drive was connected to the Berry 1 satellite. And after 3 months of the satellite being up there, all of a sudden they just announced, yeah, we never can make contact with it. Like, what? Sorry, that didn't work. We haven't been saying anything for 3 months, but yeah, it didn't work. Sorry. You're like, oh my God, what the hell? So supposedly there's 2 more tests for EM drive in space set for 2025. Cross your fingers. We'll find out. Okay. So we really need EM drive. Also, just side note, Obama might be responsible for MH370. At a minimum, Barack Obama knows. For the record, too, I've heard the viral load argument regarding masks. Yeah, viral load. How do you think of? You have to think about how a virus works. Viral load. So the way a virus works is that a virus will attack a susceptible host, one who has a weakened immune system. It gets into your cell, it reproduces, and then it bursts out. So if you look at it like that, you're like, why would the viral load matter at all? The main factor is going to be being healthy. Because if you're healthy, then it doesn't matter if the viral load that hits you is 1 or 500 or 5,000. You're going to have a good chance of not getting sick. But if you're not healthy, then it doesn't matter if it's 1 or 50. If one gets in and starts spreading, then they're going to spread. And after one iteration, they've already got the 50 or 500 or 5,000 or whatever, right? So the viral load arguments never made any sense. Okay. Now let's go. Oh, I kind of want to play it. There's a lot of stuff, actually, guys. Okay. Oh, this is the one. Where's the other one? Okay. So this one's really important, guys. Now, if you want to know how free energy works, you want to understand this post right here. Free energy concept dipole. Keeping a dipole open is a crucial concept in the pursuit of over-unity systems, particularly in the context of energy extraction from the vacuum or 0-point energy. The idea is to maintain the conditions under which a dipole can be continuously extract and emit the energy without closing or neutralizing itself. So the concept here is you want to have a battery that never neutralizes. The charges, you have an asymmetry of the charges. So this is actually very similar to what I was saying before with respect to the Casimir cavity. really all we need is an asymmetry. We need more electrons down here than we have up here, or a stronger negative charge down here than we have up here. And then what's going to happen? They're going to try to, in their circuit, trying to neutralize, and we're going to have energy flowing. So a dipole in this context refers to a separation of positive and negative charges, such as a battery, a capacitor, or a permanent magnet. When a dipole is established, it creates an electric field that can interact with the surrounding vacuum or the environment, potentially drawing in energy from these sources. So I asked an AI to give me these answers, and I was like, oh, this is pretty good. The problem of dipole collapse in conventional systems, as soon as the dipole begins to do work, such as powering a load, the energy flow from the dipole tends to neutralize the separation of charges. For instance, in a battery, the positive and negative charges gradually neutralize as the battery discharges, causing the dipole to close. When the dipole closes, the energy flow stops and the system needs to be recharged or reset. To achieve overunity or a sustained energy extraction, the key is to keep the dipole from collapsing. This involves several strategies. Magnetic materials, especially permanent magnets, can create a persistent dipole without requiring continuous energy input. In overunity concepts, permanent magnets are used because their magnetic dipole does not collapse. The magnetic field is stable. It can be manipulated to induce electrical currents in nearby conductors without neutralizing the magnetic dipole itself. So if you look at what a, what's it called? Inductor. If you look at what an inductor is, an inductor basically just, when the magnetic field like releases, it's like it basically charges the second half of the current. So this is interesting. Like if you think of, I should just thought, I can't even say it honestly, guys. That's as much as I'm going to say on that front. I could say more on this, but I'm not going to. But just permanent magnets are interesting. Look at what an inductor is. Asymmetric energy extraction. The goal is to extract energy in a way that does not deplete the dipole. This can be achieved by designing circuits that are exploit asymmetric interactions. For example, some theories suggest using specially designed coils or capacitors that capture energy from the environment like a vacuum while minimizing the back reaction that would normally cause the dipole to collapse. So you're seeing the similarities here. You know, it's all basically about keeping the dipole open. By tuning the system to a resonant frequency. Now, what is a resonant frequency? It's just a beat. Think of music. Boom, 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 boom. Any beat we get is a resonance. So by tuning the system to a frequency, energy can be recycled within the system. Resonance allows for amplification of the energy being exchanged between the dipole and the load without requiring a corresponding increase in the input energy. I mean, just listen to what I just said right there. They said using resonance, you can amplify the energy without an increase in input. That right there is overunity. That whole concept is. If done correctly, this can keep the dipole open and continuously emitting energy. Splitting the electric flow, energy flow. Some overunity devices aim to split the energy flow using one part to power the load and another part to maintain the dipole. By carefully managing the energy pathways, the dipole can remain active. This involves sophisticated circuit designs that ensure the energy used to maintain the dipole is less than energy extracted for useful work. So this is, guys, this part right here, this is what I'm talking about, why the back end matters. So listen to the paragraph I just said right there. Now you realize that like just getting the energy to allow the device to power itself is a circuit design issue. And that's true. So then you realize, oh, well, you need to have a back-end design and circuit for this as well. Exploiting the vacuum energy, theoretical physics suggests that dipole interacts with the vacuum, drawing in what's known as zero-point energy. The challenge is to keep this interaction ongoing without closing the dipole. This might involve the use of materials or configurations that continuously draw in vacuum energy, akin to tapping into an endless reservoir. Well, there we go. Oh, all the ladies are out today. We got Flint Fancy here. We've got Amanda's here. Welcome. James, sorry, James. Emily McKenzie's here. Is that, I haven't seen Pig James in a while. Okay. So there we go. We're tapping into our endless reservoir. I mean, and this is from the AI, guys. This is just from the AI of Bearden's work. So now you see, like, this is it. I feel like the whole world is fake whenever I tune in. Kirky, that's how I feel every day now. So welcome. That's what we call the ontological shock. When you start reading this and you're like, this makes way too much sense. Like what we're reviewing here makes way too much sense. It's just so simple. Why have we not been focusing on this? And you're like, oh, those are the questions that are more scary. It's like, why has this been ignored? Also, how has this been ignored? Okay. Permanent dipoles. Utilize materials or systems where the dipole is naturally permanent, such as certain types of crystals, permanent magnets, or specific atomic structures can keep the dipole open indefinitely. These systems are being designed to naturally resist the neutralizing effects of work being done by the dipole. Crystals is a really interesting one. I never really thought about crystals. Specific atomic structures are going to be metamaterials. So this is really, really interesting right here. Self-sustaining dipole. In a theoretical over-unity device, you might have a permanent magnet that creates a continuous magnetic field. This magnet can be coupled with a coil that generates a current when the magnetic field changes due to rotation. If the system is designed so that the energy extracted from the coil is fed back into the system, the dipole remains open and continues to draw energy from the environment. So the moment you do that, you have coefficient of performance greater than 1. You have a perpetual motion machine, but it's even more than a perpetual motion machine. A perpetual motion machine is just 100% efficiency. This is multiple times higher than 100% efficiency. Practical challenges. Keeping a dipole open in this way is extremely challenging, a topic of much debate and experimentation in alternative energy research. Conventional physics asserts that any attempt to extract energy will eventually lead to the dipole's collapse, necessitating input energy to reset it. However, proponents of the over-unity believe that with the right configuration, it is possible to keep the dipole open indefinitely, lending to a continuous energy extraction. That's exactly what I believe. I believe that with the right configuration, it's possible to keep the dipole open indefinitely, leading to a continuous energy extraction. And I think that fusion power is also just a method of this as well. Okay, so let's take a look at what I got. Sorry, I'm looking real quick. I want to show you guys. Okay. We're going to watch this video real quick. I think we have time for this. Okay. So this is a ball with negative mass, and I'm just going to skip through the beginning parts right here.
Ball floating in
He's got the ball in the water, and so you can imagine what negative mass would
water. And this type of setup has a really interesting effect on it.
I'm just going to mute this for a second. We've shown this effect, but it's really important to understand negative mass is just a negative energy pressure differential. And at the end of the day, there is no real negative mass. We can produce a negative mass effect, though, using removal of energy, negative energy. So right there, that's interesting because he pushes it and it doesn't go backwards towards his hand. Like if you were pushing on it, you would expect the ball to come back at you. If I push this way, I'd expect to go this way. Like if I'm in a car and I accelerate, I'm going to get pulled backwards. But instead, actually, it goes forward.
That was so cool. Did you see what just happened? So a different way of saying it is this, that instead of going the direction that the string is pulling it, it goes in the opposite direction of the string pulling it. So that means that a negative mass goes in the opposite direction of a force applied to it instead of the same direction. Okay, so the same thing happens to a balloon in the car when you're driving. So when I accelerate, you'd expect the balloon to go backwards, like you get moved backwards in your seat. But what actually happens is this when I move forward. Okay, accelerating. 3, 2, 1. So the reason
That's pretty weird, huh? It goes forward instead of backward. And then he explains there's a pressure differential. So it's very analogous to gravity.
is happening is because when I accelerate, it creates a slight pressure differential of the air in the car. And so the pressure is a little bit greater at the back of the car than the front of the car. And this causes there to be higher pressure at the back of the balloon than the front of the balloon. And so it pushes the balloon forward. So it's essentially like creating a slight gravitational force where that would be down and this is up. And since the balloon is buoyant, it moves upward, which would be that way. It goes forward when I accelerate. And the opposite happens when I slam on the brakes. It moves backwards. So in all the formulas of physics, including Einstein's general theory of relativity, everything still works out just fine when you put a negative sign in front of a mass.
I think I can skip ahead, but I don't. There's another part later on that he mentioned, so we might just watch the rest of it. It's only a couple more minutes. So that's important, though. Everything in Einstein's general relativity still works out when you put a minus sign. So why have we been calling it negative energy and negative mass? We've been calling it negative because there's a minus sign in Einstein's equations. That's the reason why we call it negative. This is the reason why you don't want to think of it as an exotic substance, because a negative number, when you graph it out, is just below the 0 point. That's why we call it 0 point energy, because the 0 point is on a graph, the middle. So when you remove it to the negative number, you're going down. This is why you want to think of 0 as your equilibrium, not as nothing. It's just an equilibrium.
And so you can go ahead and calculate all the physical formulas you want if you put a negative sign in front of the mass. Although in general, we consider a negative mass to be a physical impossibility, in the physical equations that we use to predict what will happen in our world, it actually isn't restricted by anything. So this has led scientists to question whether they were actually wrong about there not being negative mass. Is there such a thing as negative mass? There actually could be negative mass, but the problem is finding it.
So there's not negative mass. We can see all around us. There's no black, gooey, purple substance that's mass, but we don't need negative mass, because the moment we realize that we are in an equilibrium and then we can dip down into it using, say, for example, Dirac holes that Jeremy just brought up in the chat. Yeah, I'm actually very familiar with Dirac holes and the Dirac sea, because that's exactly what we're talking about here. Dirac hole and Dirac sea. You're basically just taking the energy out of these Dirac holes, they call them, and the negative energy gets pulled out and turned into usable real energy. And I think the dynamic Casimir effect is showing a version of extracting that energy from the Dirac holes. Though then again, you could argue everything is. And this is the big thing that I think physicists miss, is that we don't need to be looking for this exotic substance. We have negative energy because negative energy is just normal energy that we're pulling out of the vacuum all the time.
Because as you see, negative mass has some really weird properties. Here's all the weird.
But here's the other beauty. Because mass is energy, then we can get negative mass effects by pulling the energy out. So we don't need a negative mass. We just need the negative energy part of it. And what is negative energy, we decide? Just extracting or shielding the energy in a region of space-time. This is what the Casimir effect shows. So we just need to be able to shield an area of space-time from the 0 point fluctuations, and we've produced negative energy.
Things that you would see if you got your hands on some negative mass. So I'm going to talk about a few instances. In all these instances, I'm using the physical equations where you would just plug in a negative m instead of a positive m. And here's the results you would get. You might be tempted to think that a negative mass on the Earth would float and fly away. But here's the weird thing. So it's true, if you plug in a negative m to the gravitational formula, you get that the force would not be down like normal, but it would be an upward force. But because it's a negative mass, if you plug it into the acceleration formula, force equals mass times acceleration, and the force is going that way, it actually wants to accelerate the opposite way, so it moves downwards. So a negative mass would still be attracted to a normal positive mass like the Earth. So if I had a ball of negative mass, it would just fall to the Earth like this. So the falling would look normal, but what about when it hits something? So I told you that a negative mass doesn't accelerate in the direction of the force.
Sorry, this is where it gets really confusing. He starts to use double negatives, and it's confusing because Newton would always say that there's an equal and opposite. So there's a force going down, and there's also a force going up. So I might be misunderstanding it, but I believe if you dropped a negative mass onto the Earth, what I expect would happen is that the ball is just not going to bounce. The ball would just boom, stick to the ground, as opposed to boing, 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 boing. The way he's about to describe it, he's going to say that it would just go right through. Which I guess if the ball could go through the Earth, it probably would. But if the ball can't go through the Earth, you're going to have a collision that's going to occur, and that's why the ball is going to stop in either sense. Yeah, I think isn't that what this is? Is this not Smarter Every Day? See what a balloon does in a car when you accelerate. Yeah, we were actually just looking at that example a second ago. And then with respect to the Dirac hole, I think Jeremy said he's doing an experiment. So this is just my humble opinion, but there was a video we watched 2 weeks ago, I want to say, where we saw a video of a guy talking. He went through Tesla's old notes, and what he determined from Tesla's old notes was something like discharging your capacitor was leading to some kind of amplification effect. I don't know. I don't know if that helps you or not, but Tesla's notes, I feel like Tesla was kind of on it. Okay, here we go. Oh, wait, nope. Debunkers are negative mass. Weird properties, you don't need them. When you drop by, they just hit the Earth. Brutal. Brutal.
It accelerates the opposite way. So that means if this ball was a negative mass and I dropped it, as soon as it hit the ground and felt the force of the ground, it wouldn't be pushed the opposite way, but in fact, it would be accelerated even further into the ground. And the harder it accelerated, the harder the ground would push back, and it would accelerate even more. So essentially what would happen is if this ping pong ball were a negative mass and I dropped it towards the Earth, it would just shoot through the Earth at an incredible speed, continually accelerating.
I don't think it's going to shoot through the Earth, but whatever. Good enough, honestly. F equals ma, and it's a elastic collision or inelastic, whatever. It's elastic, I guess. So I don't know. I'm pretty sure what would happen is I'm right. I'm pretty sure the ball is going to hit the Earth and just stop and just not bounce. Oop.
Getting through the Earth and pop out the other side. And if negative mass actually exists in the universe, this is one of the reasons why we would never see it. Because if it ever came into contact with any positive mass like us, it would just shoot through us and speed off away. And here's an even weirder thing that would happen with negative mass. So if negative mass actually exists and you had a planet that was made of negative mass and a planet that was made of normal positive mass, and let's say the magnitude of those masses were equal, well, what would happen is the negative mass would be attracted to the positive.
Okay, I'm just going to skip ahead of this part. Because what he says, oh, you have negative mass and positive mass. What happens is your negative mass chases your positive mass. It's pretty weird. The negative mass is attracted to the positive mass, but the positive mass is repulsed by the negative mass. So this also, though, is important because you start to realize, like, well, shouldn't you be able to make perpetual motion from this?
How they get very close to the speed of light. And let's get even deeper than that. If negative mass does exist in the universe, then it could actually cause a singularity similar to a black hole.
Singularity similar to a black hole? What did he just say? Also, the negative mass, positive mass chasing should make sense that this is what a gravity wave is, right? A gravity wave. What is a gravity wave? It's basically the waves in space-time in the zero-point energy field. That's basically just what gravity is. So the fact that a positive mass chases a negative mass should make sense because that's just flip it over. It's a wave oscillating.
But not have an event horizon around it. And it would be called a naked singularity. And it actually wouldn't be like a black hole at all. It would be a singularity, but it wouldn't attract stuff gravitationally towards it. In fact, it would be like a cosmic particle accelerator. Anything that got near it would just accelerate like crazy away from it. So what's even weirder, all of this negative mass stuff isn't as crazy as it sounds. In fact, Adam Rees, he's one of the astrophysicists that earned a Nobel Prize when he discovered that the universe is expanding at an increasing rate. He wrote this in his notebook. He said, "What I initially measured and wrote in my lab notebook in the fall of 1997 was stunning. The only way to match the change in the expansion rate I was seeing was to allow the universe to have a negative mass."
He just said the only way he could explain the expansion of the universe is if the universe has negative mass. Well, that is huge. He's basically saying, I did the math, and the math always comes up with a negative sign on it. What does that mean? That means we basically have to have this negative mass ocean of energy there. That's the only way that the universe can expand the way we expect. Again, the positive mass chasing the negative mass. The positive mass chasing the negative mass is just the energy just flattening out over space-time. Like if you took a bunch of paint and you drop the paint on the canvas and all the paint's going to spread out. It's the same thing that the energy is doing on space-time itself. And he also said another interesting thing. If you were to go towards the center of a negative mass or a negative energy there, you're going to accelerate extremely fast. Well, what does that remind you of? Doesn't that remind you a little bit of teleportation? If you imagine like breaking through the singularity of the speed of light, you're accelerating to the speed of light. Plane's just gone. You're basically just squeezing that area of space-time when you're doing that. And then it's appearing over here somewhere else.
What we've said instead is that the universe has something called dark energy. And that dark energy is what's causing everything to fly apart and expand the universe.
So we basically are just idiots. So let's just summarize this. Humans are idiots. Instead of just admitting that there's negative energy and just admitting that the ether is real, we basically just said, nah, we're going to ignore that. They did the math and the math came up with a negative sign. They're like, nah, we're going to ignore that too. So we're going to ignore all negative energy. And we're just going to say that, yeah, there's this made up thing called dark energy. That's what caused it to happen. You guys understand why I don't respect physicists? This is why. There's no logic. It's literally just cherry picking what bullshit you want to believe in. It's the same thing that happens with the MH370 investigation and all the OG investigators. They just cherry pick what evidence they want to believe in. Any evidence that doesn't fit their stuff, we're not going to talk about it. And it's not situations where it can just be like some rows on an Excel spreadsheet somebody could have faked. A lot of it's like 20 real witnesses. You're like, I just don't want to believe what they had to say. Fire suppression device washed it up. I'm just not going to believe that. It's like physical evidence, like actual hard evidence. It's crazy. Yeah, and I think next week's stream is going to be Bose-Einstein condensates on Wednesday, because that's the next thing I want to talk about is a Bose-Einstein condensate a fifth state of matter? We have solid, liquid, gas, plasma, Bose-Einstein condensate. Interesting. Okay, next thing. Let's get into the good stuff here, everybody. Joe Rogan interview. It's what you guys all came here for. It's what you all came here for. Before they do that, I want to show this. Jeremy, if you like, I don't think I have to convince you of Dirac holes, but I would check out Dr. Dan Solomon. He has 3 or 4 scientific papers where he does the equations and the math on the Dirac holes. And he's like, yes, this is basically got to be negative energy state, and it's consistent with all the physics, and we're just being idiots and we're ignoring it pretty much. So in Dirac's hole theory of the vacuum is generally believed that the vacuum is generally believed to be the state of minimum energy. It'll be shown that it is not the case, and there must exist states in the hole theory where less energy than the vacuum state. It'll be shown that energy can be extracted from the hole theory vacuum state through application of an electric field. So, I mean, here you go, Jeremy. You might want to read this one, especially if you're doing a experiment on trying to extract the energy. Like, there you go, right here. My guess is this electric field has to be very powerful. Oh, see, now I'm getting tips. I actually will do this. YCBO superconductors, yeah, YCBO superconductors are very interesting to me. Very interesting if you know the history of those superconductors and the scientists that researched them. Perforated sheet. Okay, that should be enough for me to find out. Okay, sweet. Yeah, and so my response is you should check these papers out by Dan Solomon. I read them. I find them to be very compelling. Okay, now let's get to the Joe Rogan stuff. Okay, but we don't have to watch the whole thing because I put some time notes on here. We're going to talk smack about Lue Elizondo. I think I'm just going to give my opinion right away about Lue Elizondo. So my opinion of Lue Elizondo hasn't really changed after I watched this. My opinion has always been that Lue Elizondo is part of what I will call controlled disclosure. When I talk about controlled disclosure, I'm talking about people that are literally, when I say the word spooks, I mean they're intelligence people. They are people that are coordinating with other people and other entities out there, and they have a plan. They have literally a plan. This is how we're going to do it, blah, 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 and then that's what they're doing. And so Lue Elizondo, Ross Coulhart's definitely in this group. Jeremy Corbell, I don't know if they're necessarily the same faction, but they're like multiple factions that they commingle, what have you. They're the faction that they want to disclose aliens to people. They want to tell people there's weird stuff we can't explain. They don't want to explain it, and they want to keep it hidden because it's an interest of national security. And the way I know for sure this is the case with Lue Elizondo after watching the interview we're going to watch right now. I think he lies in this interview. Hopefully I have the clip. I think he lies in this interview and says this is not a cover for any technology we have. It definitely is. He's definitely lying to cover up for the government what we have. It's a lie by omission mostly because he knows we are reverse engineering that technology, and he would not be able to speak about any weapon systems that we have developed. The two things that Lue Elizondo cannot talk about are surveillance capabilities and weapon systems. A lot of this stuff are weapon systems and the surveillance capabilities. This is the difference between Lue Elizondo and I. He has NDAs. He says like 50 times during this interview, he can't speak on stuff because he has NDAs. Surveillance systems, weapon capabilities. This should tell you right away that this UFO technology, scalar physics, I'm just going to call it, because I'm not convinced of aliens. There might be aliens, but I'm not convinced of it yet. We have the ability to have this technology. And I know because Hal Puthoff and Eric Davis definitely know, just reading from their scientific papers, they definitely know. And the more I've read about these guys, the more I'm like, yeah, okay. They've been connected to the CIA and, defense contractors for 40, 50 years. Okay. Yeah. They know 100% guys. But again, there's factions out there. I think he's lying about that stuff. I think in general, he has positive intent because I think a lot of these people are like, we cannot accept this information. People's minds will break. And I think I agree. I think people's minds will break. I don't even disagree on the national security aspect. I think it is I think it's a doomsday weapon. I think if you can extract energy from the vacuum, that's a free energy. That's a doomsday weapon. You just let it accumulate, and now you've got a Goku soul bomb on the planet or whatever, and you can just blow up the whole planet. And that's at a minimum. You can probably engineer it to destroy the planet much easier than that as well. So I don't even disagree on that front. So you may say, Ashton, then why are you doing what you're doing? Because I love science, man. I love science, and I love my followers. And I think the world deserves to know, and then we can make an informed decision. And if we destroy ourselves, well, then I guess we weren't, I guess we didn't make it through the great filter. I guess we were never meant to be. I believe in free will. Don't you guys? Oh, yeah. And Kirkpatrick is definitely a liar. Guys, Kirkpatrick, apparently, someone was telling me something about him inventing lasers or something like this. Anybody that's working on laser systems that's like that level of, quantum physics and they're engineering lasers, they know there's some weird shit in the physics world. Like, because lasers are already kind of interesting, but you can imagine like powering lasers up. And if you're seeing these kinds of effects, like Kirkpatrick definitely knows. There's what we call some of like the lifers, like the made men in like the mafia of this deep state or whatever you want to call them that's hiding this shit. And these guys will lie. They will do anything. They'll go down with the ship. In my opinion, Kirkpatrick's one of the dudes that knows, and he has no problem lying to a camera, no problem lying to people because he believes he's morally justified and that he's getting paid a lot of money to do it. That's just my opinion of him. Maybe I'm wrong, but I don't think so. Okay, let's keep going. You guys are awesome, by the way. Yeah, and for the record, AARO still hasn't responded to me. Why is the AARO not responding to me since April? Since April. They were messaging me, like emailing me like every other week. I'm like considering doxing the guy's name because I want to be like, did I get scammed? Or if not, put pressure on this guy. Like, why has he not responded to me? So for random spooks who are watching me and private military contractors watching me and the AARO guys, anybody who's watching me, I'm being nice to you guys. I could be going way more all in on this. I could be out here like engineering shit, buying stuff, explaining exactly how to produce some of this stuff, but I'm holding back because I do think we're going to destroy ourselves with this. Let's get to it. I got a lot more to say, but I want to watch some of this. So first clip, he starts talking about our capabilities around 31 minutes in. I'm just going to play it. We'll play a couple extra minutes. There's only one part where I want to listen to like about 10 minutes straight.
Russia was trying to develop the atomic bomb and still was using horse-drawn carts for a lot of their military operations.
So that point, honestly, I didn't have that point on my thing, but that's really important because people are like, well, if this stuff is real, what is Elon Musk doing? SpaceX is a front company. SpaceX is a front, guys. I'm just going to be honest. Does Elon Musk know it's obsolete? I'm not sure. But it wouldn't surprise me, honestly, at this point. But, you know, we're only putting money into SpaceX because, like, we're putting 10 times the amount of money into, like, this technology behind the scenes, probably. I mean, that's what I would guess. They're hiding it, and they have no problem, like, having horse-drawn carriages while we're working on nuclear power. That's pretty much what this is. Like, we're working on zero-point energy and free energy, and we're still sending rockets up there. The bigger question is, why are we not going back to the moon? And the answer is because we don't want to waste a bunch of money on trips to the moon because it's completely obsolete. We've got technology that renders conventional rocketry and trips to the moon obsolete and dangerous when we have much safer ways to do it. Imagine it comes out later, we had a safer way to travel to the moon, and a bunch of people go to the moon and they end up dying. What do you tell their families? Like, yeah, we could have sent them up there in a much safer vehicle, but we just like chose not to because we had to keep it secret from everybody. Yeah, and I'm starting to agree. Like, honestly, I was skeptical about Jeremy's take on Elizondo and Corbell, but I actually now like pretty much 100% agree. They prop those guys up, especially Elizondo. You don't go on like Good Morning America or whatever it was, and 60 Minutes and Ross Coulhart's News Nation thing and Joe Rogan all in the same week unless it's been set out well in advance. Trust me, I've gone on like 100 podcasts. It doesn't play out like that. So these people are being like set up with connections. And it's not like, hey, the CIA directly goes to Joe Rogan. No, it's that somebody Joe Rogan trusts gets talked to and they say, you should talk to this guy Elizondo. He's coming out with a new book. The timing would be great, blah, blah, blah. And somebody manages all this. This is not organic at all. This is the same reason why Corbell goes on like 6 times. Corbell's never shown a video that hasn't got debunked. Okay, here we go. And again, it's not to say he's a bad guy, but he's controlled disclosure 100%. And it even doesn't mean even what he's saying is wrong. I'm not even disagreeing with everything he says. I'm just saying this guy could be saying way more than what he's saying on this video right now.
So temporally speaking, it doesn't make sense. This is the analogy I've used before, Joe, that it would be like sort of the Carter going into King Tut's tomb for the very first time in the 1920s, discovering King Tut's tomb, and when he goes in, he finds a fully assembled 747 jet.
So this analogy is important too. Now, this is one I actually struggle with because the problem here is that there's sightings of these UFOs and stuff going back to like the 20s, like way back, like 100 years. And it's like, I can believe that we can make some orbs now. 2024, even 2014, we can make some orbs. We can teleport an airplane. I can believe that. We're pretty advanced. In like the 1930s or 1940s, could we have some orbs floating around? Teleporting airplanes? That's the part I struggle with a lot more. That's the part where I'm like, okay, if there were orbs flying around in the 20s, probably has got to be something else going on here. And that's what Lue Elizondo is saying right here. So this is the part where, truthfully, guys, I say I don't care about aliens, but that doesn't mean I'm dismissing aliens and non-human intelligence. I consider it a lot. I just not going to go all in on something without some evidence.
It doesn't make sense. Temporally speaking, right. They did not have that technology. So is it possible, and I'll be very careful what I say, that the U.S. government has some sort of exotic technology? Well, my answer is I sure hope so, because we want to have an advantage over our adversaries.
There we go. I mean, that's the admission we needed, chat. That was the admission. 31 minutes in. Gets asked, or he tells himself, is it possible the U.S. government has some exotic technology? I sure hope so. Okay, that answer right there is about as good of a yes as you're ever going to get. He's saying right there, we've got it now, but we didn't have it maybe 100 years ago. And I'm not going to go into details, but it's important he answers that way because that's truthful.
But in 1950, that wasn't the case.
Right. And do they have any film of these crafts from New Mexico?
There is film of many craft, and not just New Mexico per se, but over many military installations. Here, I got another one for you. I'll provide you. You don't want to have to waste your time reading it, but I think you'll appreciate this.
Okay, I'm going to skip ahead here, but he does talk several times about there's a bunch of videos out there, he says. And he says that the Tic Tac and the ones from 2017 are like the worst ones. And I've heard this a lot. And this is not a surprise to us because we're looking at the best videos in the public realm, period. Like when we're looking at these videos here, it does not get any better. I'm just going to go show just the zap. Like when it comes to UFO videos, I don't know what anybody else would be expecting, but to see like, I want to see it in thermal. I want to see like the heat signatures and the cold lines in front of the orbs. Can you imagine like before the MH370 videos got popular, if you had asked somebody, what would be the best UFO video possible? You'd be like, give me a real world event with 2 angles. And I want to make one of them in infrared as well. You're like, you need one of them to be in infrared? Come on. Here we go. We've got it right here. Literally in thermal vision. Like this is as far as like, this is crazy. And then just so happens these videos line up with everything that we're literally about to listen to from Lue Elizondo right after this video finishes right here. So there's a bunch of science by a guy named Hal Puthoff and Eric Davis, 2 of them. There's others as well, but those are the 2 that I'm seeing like repeatedly. That basically, unless one of those 2 guys made that video that we just watched, it has to be real because like it's exactly consistent with the science and physics they have been writing about for over 20 years, well before the plane. Well before the plane. Next one, how are they hiding it?
Any time we could launch, let's focus on that more so than the other stuff. And that has been my observation on why they didn't want to address the problem, the challenge openly with the general public back. And they also were worried. There was several studies that suggested that most people would be very uncomfortable with that idea that there's something else in the cosmos potentially, or even right here on Earth, and that it would create some sort of societal disruption, right?
So yeah, the society disruption, this goes to show you there's some socioeconomic reason why they're hiding it. Now, I don't think I clipped it. Let me look up. Did I miss it? I guess I didn't clip it. But he also says he thinks the reason why they're hiding it is because he thinks that the aliens are going to attack us. They're going to attack us if we become aware of their presence, which is something I've heard. There's a theory that's out there. Bullshit. We're hiding it. We don't give a shit about aliens. We're hiding it because it's a doomsday weapon. It's the end of the world, and it would completely upheave our entire society. That's why we're really hiding it. End of the world, upheave our society. We have the technology. He has to lie about it. So instead of going, oh, well, it's the end of the world and we have to hide it for doomsday reasons, he doesn't want to freak people out like he's saying right now. They're hiding it. They're just saying, oh, well, it's because the aliens are going to come and invade us. What the fuck are you talking about? If the aliens wanted to invade us, they would have done so 1,000 years ago. They could do so anytime they want tomorrow. We are of no threat to anybody with the type of technology that I've been talking about on this stream and other people have been talking about. No threat whatsoever. They're like gods to us if you have free energy like that. Okay? So like this is the part where it's wild. Okay. Let's keep going.
They didn't want to cause panic. They were afraid that people would kind of like think of a run on Wall Street, right?
Mm-hmm. And also, real quick, this is the part where I don't know if Lue Elizondo himself doesn't know or if he's just intentionally lying. He's either being misdirective here about this and trying to push the conversation towards like, blah, 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 the aliens are scary. But here's the thing, too. Later on, he mentions the idea of they could be malevolent, they could be helpful, or they could be neutral. And honestly, if you look at that, I actually wrote a Twitter post back in October last year about this and said, no matter the scenario, you should be trying to reverse engineer the technology to catch up to them. If they're good, then great. We can reverse engineer it in their face and try to catch up. If they're bad, we need to reverse engineer it even faster so that when the time comes that they're going to come stomp their boot on us, we maybe have a fighting chance. And if they're neutral and they just don't care about us, then again, we should be reverse engineering it. So no matter how you look at it, it doesn't matter if it's whether or not they're good or evil or neutral. It doesn't make any difference on whether or not we would tell the public. We would tell the public in any of those scenarios. Yeah. In the MH370 videos, like there's two main debunks. So one of them, they're trying to claim some 90s video game explosion is what we're seeing. And I'm going, dude, that's not even the right kind of event is what we're looking at. We're looking at an endothermic absorption of energy. Like the whole point of a stock effect is you just put it in there and plant it in there, save yourself some time. And they're like, no, they put it in there. They changed the number of frames. They manually moved all the pixels around individually. They changed the shading of it. And you're like, why would they do all of that? Like to make it perfectly match Eric Davis's scientific papers? Anyway, the next thing actually is going to be about that. Actually, I'm going to let it play for another 30 seconds.
People get panicked. They do kind of strange things sometimes. And I think the government was very worried about that.
What's the most compelling modern thing that you've seen?
Oh my God, I can't talk about it. Unfortunately, this is my frustration, Joe, because I know what I've seen. I know my colleagues have seen, right? And to this day, there's video that's coming in on a regular routine basis that is very, very compelling. And if
how do they hide this stuff from the general public?
So, and right there's the part I wanted. So there's a ton of videos. And when he's talking about what he's seen, he's talking about what he's seen on sensor data. He's not talking about what he's seen personally. He's not talking about experiences he's had. He's like, dude, I've seen the videos. And this is like, you want to know the type of reaction that what you would have had to have seen to elicit the type of reaction Lue Elizondo just showed. You'd have to see this. If somebody shows you this footage that the world doesn't even understand we have this capability. Somebody shows you this footage here, and you see this, and you're like, yeah, that's not fake, is it? And they're like, no, we're looking at a Citrix session. I'm remote terminaled into the spy satellite database right now. You're like, okay, I'm going to need to record that. Like, this is this is the equivalent of what Lue Elizondo's seen. Like, if you put yourself in his shoes, somebody that can't lie, and doesn't want to lie openly, but has an NDA. If you saw this video, everything Lue Elizondo's saying right now would make sense. You're like, yeah, we don't know what that is. But in this case, if you know this is us, you know, in this particular case, this is us, that's where you got to like be a little bit deceptive about it. Because you're like, shit, I can't like admit the fact that Obama like signed off on orbiting this plane away, or he was told afterwards and covered it up. I can't admit to either of those. He could go to prison if he admits to either of those things. So this is why he's like, I wish I could tell you, but I literally can't because I will go to prison.
Well, we have classified systems. We hide a lot of
but
things.
how is it getting filmed?
And so this is great. Like Joe probes him pretty well. Right? Like this is where I'm like, Joe, why are you not talking to me, bro? The difference between me and Lue Elizondo right here is Lue Elizondo's like, I can't tell you. He's like, how is it being recorded? How are they capturing this information? And I go, okay, Joe, have you ever heard of SBIRS, the space-based infrared system? Oh, yeah. You had Annie Jacobson on, and she was telling you about SBIRS. And she was saying that we have this system where we can see down, and they claim it's for detecting missile launches, and they can detect them within a fraction of a second. Well, here's a spoiler alert. It also just films the whole planet, and they beam that information to ground-based computers, and they can just track anywhere on the planet anytime they want, anywhere they want. And then he goes, oh, yeah, well, and I go, have you seen the movie Enemy of the State? And then the next thing I go is, have you heard of our surveillance system? Turns out, like, maybe most of the UFOs are underwater. USOs. This is why they're calling them UAPs or whatever. If they're underwater, then you know what would be great? Maybe like a sound surveillance system. Oh, it turns out there is one literally called the Sound Surveillance System run by the Navy. SOSUS, Sound Surveillance System. The thing that can pick up a Titan sub, a tiny little sub imploding near the Titanic and pinpoint this, triangulate its location. Yeah, I think that we've got a pretty good surveillance capability. Instead, what does Lue Elizondo say?
Is any of it getting filmed by the general public, or is all this military stuff?
So let me backtrack a little bit. There's a general public that is filming stuff, but from a Department of Defense perspective, our focus, now Aero is a different story, but when I was in the government, we had to be very, very careful of something that we called intelligence oversight. Back in the 60s and 70s, the U.S. intelligence apparatus, particularly in the Department of Defense.
Basically, he's saying he's not allowed to lie and he'll get in a shitload of trouble. Okay, next thing. So this is where he started. This part, this is going to get wild, guys. So get ready. Pay attention now. So one of the number one questions we get about the MH370 videos is, shouldn't the clouds be moving? I try not to be rude, but it really confuses me that a lot of people don't know how clouds work. I don't know where they think they're filming the thing from, but the further away you are from an object, the less apparent motion there is. That's why when we look out at the stars, they don't look like they're moving, because they're really, 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 really far away, but they are all moving. This is the same true for clouds as well. If you're hundreds of kilometers or miles away, the clouds don't look like they're moving. In fact, if you're outside and you look up at your clouds, they don't even look like they're moving. And this is because when the screen is moving, each perspective is only like 5 seconds long. So, and it turns out if you actually take the first and last frames, you can actually see the clouds not moving, but evolving. Like the tops of the clouds are moving like this because there's wind shear going across the top. Anyway, side quest. We're going to go back to the main thing now. It's a fair question, but yeah.
Even underwater. So that is a fundamentally different type of technology than we are used to dealing with.
Is the assumption that they are doing something with space, time, and gravity around them, rather than using something like a jet propulsion engine that blasts fire out the back and it makes it go fast forward?
Right.
That they're doing something.
I see you, Joe Rogan. I see you, Joe Rogan.
That alters the gravity around them.
Yeah. So
and that's why they can go through everything.
Yeah. So we had some of the best scientists on the team, folks like Dr. Hal Puthoff and some other folks that I'm not allowed to say their names, Dr. Eric Davis and some others.
Where is it?
That were doing the calculations, mathematical calculations on how this is possible. And the consensus was by the scientists, not me, because I'm not a physics expert. I'm not an astrophysicist. They were saying that. So let me back up here. Initially, the government for years.
Honestly, man, I pray for the day where Joe Rogan's going, okay, Ashton, how does the warp drive work? Holy shit. Lue Elizondo's fumbling the bag like crazy right now. He's just fumbling the bag. Dude, you want to know how warp drive works? Okay, let's start talking about the Dirac C. Let's start talking about the equilibrium. Let's start talking about the negative energy. Oh, that's all we need. Let's talk about the negative energy pressure. This is how it's working, man. There. Let's talk about the conveyor belt. We're just pulling space-time around us here. Like, hey, and then I go, hey, Joe Rogan, it turns out all this science is all connected to the same underlying physics principles. And it turns out these guys, Eric Davis and Hal Puthoff, these are the guys who've written all the papers about it. These guys are the guys that like literally know it all. And they're not just guessing, man. Like they've clearly seen it with their eyes the same way Lue Elizondo has seen it in videos. In fact, it wouldn't surprise me if this video was literally filmed for Eric Davis. They might have actually been filming this video for Eric Davis himself. I can't rule it out. It's a non-0% chance. They were like, hey, should we send a drone up and film it in a thermal? And Eric Davis is like, yeah, that'd be sweet, because then I can prove that my science is real. Like, because why else are they filming this in thermal color like this? Like, this is obviously for some kind of intelligence purposes. We have satellite on it. We don't need a second video. And you're like, oh, yeah, they want to see how the wormhole is going to play out in like real world. If you're going to do some wormhole shit, you're definitely recording it, right? You're definitely recording it. Yeah, going back.
Was trying to identify the different exotic technologies that could explain the different performance characteristics. And it was during the ATIP years that the scientists had this consensus that if you had one type of technology, if you could do one thing, all these other observables now become possible. Kind of think of like a unifying theory. And so,
are you fucking kidding me, Lue Elizondo? This guy's stealing my goddamn thunder right now. As literally what I've just said earlier on this stream. If EM drive is possible, then, which is just impulse drive, then so is warp drive. And so is a wormhole. And bonus, so is free energy. Free energy is also possible. The same concept of the vacuum not being empty explains all of these observables from UFOs, transmedium, warp capabilities, teleportation capabilities, all explained by the exact same physics.
If you had the ability to create this bubble around you.
Okay, and sorry, because he's going to even say more shit that I've been saying. So just look at it this way, guys. Why the fuck has Lue Elizondo not reached out to me? If this is what you're saying, and there's this guy, Ashton Forbes, out of nowhere that has no NDA, that is saying all the same stuff that you are trying to disclose to Joe Rogan, wouldn't you want to be like, hey, I want to talk to that random civilian that's figuring it out, because the civilian can say everything and that I don't have to break the rules? I would think so. The only reason why I wouldn't want to talk to that person, that this person that randomly figures out all the same stuff that I know from having classified access, like Lue Elizondo has, I'd want to talk to that person, be like, that's amazing. The way I wouldn't want to talk to them, if it's like, if I have an agenda and that person is fucking my plan up, they've come in and they just wrecking balled my plan. I had all the pieces set up, and this person comes in and just catastrophic disclosure. We have the technology. It's a super doomsday weapon. Aliens are fake. No, I'm just trying to get that part up. I don't know this part. But if you're doing all that, like you're fucking his plan up. This is why he's not talking to me. This is why Jeremy Corbell's not talking to me. These guys all have a plan. It might be a shitty plan, but they have a plan. And that plan is slow acclimation. Get people comfortable with the idea of aliens. And then we'll save the doomsday stuff for like 1,000 years from now so we don't destroy ourselves. Fuck you. We're just getting it all right now.
In a localized area that insulated you from the effects of Earth's gravity. Now, what is gravity? People think that, when I drop my glasses, that's gravity. That's not gravity. That's an effect of gravity. Gravity is the warping of space-time. And that's important because people you hear the term thrown around a lot, but they don't realize that space and time are actually connected. They are one and the same. They're opposite sides, if you will, of the same coin. And so
guys, I'm just gonna say even more shit here. Like at this point, I'm like probably 1 degree of freedom away from Lue Elizondo. Like I can obviously he's talking to Hal Puthoff and Eric Davis. Lue Elizondo's not a quantum physicist or a physicist at all. So what these guys do is they talk to the engineers like Hal Puthoff and Eric Davis, and they can listen. They're smart people. They're doing basically the same thing you're doing. It's like if you guys were to go on Joe Rogan and talk about me. Like that's what Lue Elizondo is doing right now regarding the science. It's not like he went out and studied it. He was just like told, this is how it is. There you go. And that's where it's like, that's why I went through it. I was like, I need to study it myself with no bias and try to figure out how it works so I can try to figure out like what's the physics that makes sense here. It only took us because we've seen the answers, it only took us less than 9 months.
But you can't have one without the other. And so you have this ability to create a bubble around you that insulates you from the warping of space-time, let's say in this case, Earth's gravity or something like that. Then the way you experience time inside that bubble is perhaps fundamentally different than the way you might experience space-time outside that bubble, because you're not subject to the effects of gravity, which would explain potentially why things don't need wings and why they don't need propulsion.
Still potentially. That's exactly it. That's exactly the reason. Space and time are connected. Now, this also makes it so that like if you're warping space around you, there's definitely going to be a time dilation effect. Your time is going to slow down. Everything else like around you, like it's going to be like that, like poof, instantly. Or it might be in slow motion. You can manipulate it most likely. Either everything around you is going slow motion and you're just like full Matrix style, and then what that means is that your time is moving at a different rate. You have the twin paradox happening as well because you have no inertia as well. So you can change the refractive index of the medium itself. So, I mean, this is what he's saying right here. And then if you bend that space-time enough, you create what? A wormhole where from your perspective, you went from here and now you're over here. For the people that are watching, it's like, oh, like 5 minutes went by and now all of a sudden you're somewhere there. It looks like you went faster than the speed of light. Or maybe instantly.
Systems like that, right? So it's a completely different way of looking at how we understand physics and how we as humans move about. Everything we do is fundamentally force equals mass times acceleration, right? For F equals ma, right? Mass times acceleration, and you get force. This may be something a little bit different. This is not using, I said again,
it's not different. It's not different. It's literally just F equals ma. And this is the problem where when you look at F equals ma, it's actually ma equals minus F, negative F. And this is why it's always been confusing, because we're taught just to ignore the minus. But if it can move in either direction, if we can have negative energy, then the minus F makes a lot more sense now. And then the positive F is the inverse of that.
Conventional thrust, or if I, Newtonian, right? If I push this way, I have an equal and opposite reaction that way, right? That's how.
Are there any theories as to how it's accomplishing this?
There is. Actually, Dr. Hal Puthoff about 3 years ago gave a speech on this, a very interesting lecture about this technology. And if you ever,
I think, has he name dropped Hal Puthoff 4 times now, 3 or 4 times already? And this part is like, dude, oh my, can you imagine? Like, I've done more educating on this stream tonight alone than Lue Elizondo does in this interview right now. It's like, is there a theory on this? Okay, what's Ashton's answer right here? My answer right here is Sakharov 1968 said 0-point energy can explain gravity. Then Puthoff in 1989 did the math and showed that gravity can be explained as a 0-point energy fluctuation pressure differential, like the Casimir effect. Gravity can be fully explained that way. We don't need any other variables or anything. It can be fully explained, which is what we call in physics or math a mathematical proof, in my opinion. Maybe I'm misunderstanding that. So how is he not saying that right here? Especially if he talked to Puthoff, why is he not referencing that? Because he's never read those papers. He's never researched it at all. Or he's just lying and he doesn't want to explain. He doesn't want to give away that we've figured out anti-gravity. Because if you then point them to the papers and you say, here's the scientific paper from 1989, Joe Rogan's follow-up question would be like, wait, how long have we had gravity manipulation figured out? That's the question I had. And then you go, oh, well, Ning Li and Eugene Poklonov, they were researching anti-gravity in the 90s, early 90s, based on YCBO superconductors, which Jeremy Reese was talking about earlier. And then you start to realize, oh, I can kind of build a timetable for when we figured it out. 90s, 2000s, definitely before 2014.
Ever had the chance, you really should have him on, because he's an incredible human being. He's also the one who helped start the government's remote viewing program and a bunch of other stuff for the government.
This is the part where if you saw my post earlier today, the last message I sent to Joe Rogan after he, nixed the interview was I said, you should have Hal Puthoff on, because I knew that. And here's the crazy part. I didn't know. I wasn't even all in on Hal Puthoff's work back then. I just knew that Hal Puthoff knew people. And I was like, you should talk to Hal Puthoff. Now, like, I look back at that message and I'm like, you need to talk to Hal Puthoff. The guy's in his late 80s. He's not going to last forever. He needs to be on video. He should be talking to Joe Rogan, because he would explain what I just said. He would say, Sakharov said this. I wrote this paper in 89. I came up with this theory. He's going to say the same stuff I'm saying. That's why he needs to talk to Hal Puthoff.
And he's been involved in a lot of our nation's probably most classified efforts.
But what does Lue Elizondo say? If I was saying like why you need to talk to Hal Puthoff, the last thing I'm going to say is he did remote viewing. Who the fuck cares about remote viewing, dude? You're going to try to sell Joe Rogan on Hal Puthoff with psychic powers shit? Come on, man. He's talking to you about UFOs. You should be telling him that Hal Puthoff has a unification theory of gravity and 0-point energy. And he wrote the paper in 1989. That's how you should be selling Hal Puthoff to Joe Rogan in this situation. And the fact that he's not is making me wonder, like, what is your agenda here? Like, why are you not telling him he's got a unification theory that explains gravity and Hal Puthoff can explain exactly how these things are flying? No, talk to him about his psychic powers. What the fuck are you talking about, man?
But he was working with us on ATIP. He was one of our scientists. And he gave a lecture about 3 years ago to some other scientists about the specifics on how this is possible. I am not a scientist, so I'm definitely not going to speak on behalf of Hal Puthoff, because I'm sure I will muck it up. But I do recall a time when he...
Oh, if I'm on there, nothing is stopping me. I'm speaking about Hal Puthoff's work. And if Hal Puthoff thinks I get anything wrong, he can come in and correct me, and I'll go, I'm sorry, sir. I'm super sorry. But I've read enough of Hal Puthoff's papers to have a pretty good idea of what he's getting at this point.
Came into our skiff and gave us about a 3-hour lecture on this unifying theory. And at that moment, it was very much for us the epiphany that a lot of us had been searching for. He's like, look, at the end of the day, this is how it's possible. And that was kind of this, wow. So it's really not.
Can you give us a moron's
magic.
view of?
So just if you're keeping up here, Lue Elizondo just said he was told in a meeting together that Hal Puthoff said, here's how it's all possible. So presumably Hal Puthoff was like, 0-point energy explains it all. It's a pressure differential. And he's not saying any of that right now. Like, that's the answer. Like, I've been screaming the answer on Twitter, on my YouTube channel for months and months and months. And Lue Elizondo just, in a very indirect, non-detailed way, basically says that as well. Like, this is it. Hal Puthoff's got to figure it out, guys.
Of how it's possible? Like,
yeah.
Explain it to someone like me.
Yeah, well, I'm in that category, Joe. So, you know,
we're speaking the same language.
Yes, sir.
So, in fairness to him, he does a good job right here. So here we go. Folded page. He does basically, guys. He does this. But the difference is he doesn't do it like this is like the wormhole. But again, it's all the same physics. But instead, what he does, he like folds up little tiny pieces of it like this. But same idea.
Yeah, single syllable grunts, right? Yeah. So you have an object like this cup on your table, and you want it to be insulated from the effects of Earth's gravity. So you create this bubble artificially using a certain energetic source at a certain frequency.
He knows more about that too. The fact that he just says energetic source, like probably laser. I'm guessing you use a laser at a specific frequency.
And it interacts with certain material, certain metamaterial. And I got to be careful exactly what I say, but certain skin of the craft, this aluminum via the cup here. And all of a sudden, boom, you have this bubble around you where what you see on the outside is not necessarily what you see on the inside. In fact, may I do a little more drawing for you? Okay, forgive me. I'm not an artist, so I'm going to do this upside down for you, and then I'm going to...
He says drawing, but he doesn't even draw here. He just folds the paper. I'm just going to skip ahead.
Allow these points to be a little closer together.
Now he just folds the paper. I don't know what he's drawing.
What took you, let's say, 5 hours and 500 miles an hour to do it, you can do it in 1 hour. And you can do...
I'm going to skip ahead of this because basically he just takes the paper and he folds it like at various points. Like if you crinkle it up, now this point and this point are much closer. And the key here is they don't have to be right next to each other. If you fold the paper in half, you've created a wormhole. If you just kind of bend it and fold it, that's your warp drive because your warp drive is contracting space or expanding space. So it's just allowing you to flow smoothly. Yeah, I think Ryan's right. A high frequency through a superconductive fluid. And that superconductive fluid could be a Bose-Einstein condensate, like helium-3, for example. So high frequency, probably high voltage as well through a superconductive field. Cha-ching, baby. Okay, let's get to the next one. We got a few more things we got to get through. 56 minutes. There's actually a lot of good points made here.
Up to the part I can talk about. Mm-hmm. And they approved for me to talk about up to that point. When it comes to what the government may or may not have in its possession, all I can simply say is that there is very compelling evidence to suggest that the U.S. government is in absolute possession of exotic material that is not made by humans. Now, beyond that, I can't really expound upon. I haven't been given permission to talk about it. But what I can say is what I've already said for the record, which has been approved by the Pentagon. Won't get in trouble by saying it.
Mm-hmm.
Is that we are there's very compelling data to suggest that we are in possession of.
Why is the Pentagon teasing us? Why do they tell you? Why are they allowing you to say we are in possession of something that was not made by human beings, but not allowed to elaborate, not allowed to show these very compelling videos that you're talking about that you've seen?
Great. I mean, amazing question, guys. This is why I love Joe Rogan. This is where people are like, well, he canceled on you. You should hate him. He's controlled or whatever. Like, no, he's asking off the cuff questions that are smart, logical questions. He's like, you're coming here and you're telling me we've got craft the aliens are here. They might be coming for us or whatever. And that this has been all approved by the Pentagon. You've got this approved. Why can't you show us the videos then? Why can't you be like, hey, here's the proof? Why can't you show us anything? Why can't you tell us the details? And the answer is simple. It's national defense. It's weaponry. It's a war. We can reverse engineer that technology if it's not us. And if it is us, we can't give away the fact that we have it. That's the only reason. It all comes down to the technology. It's not a matter of aliens being real. They don't care about disclosing that. If aliens are here and they're a threat to us, we should want to tell people so that we can prepare, so we can fight back. The fact that they're not doing that, instead they're like, we don't want to say anything about it, it's because there's something bigger at play, like the weapons and technology. And if there are aliens, then I'm going to guess it's going to be dark as hell. Like, this is a prison planet and we've been sent here and we've lost our history, or a situation where like AI has already controlled the galaxy and AI is like suppresses all organic forms and shit like that. Something really messed up.
I don't well, two reasons. I don't think they have a choice. I think with now the introduction of cell phones and Ring cameras, the cat's out of the bag. It's the worst kept secret at this point. Two, there is a faction.
Honestly, they're doing a great job of keeping it secret. I don't buy his answers here at all. The number one answer should be because it's a doomsday weapon. That's the reason why they're hiding it. And if that's not your number one answer, then it's because you're controlled, right? Anybody who looks at free energy and warp drives and teleportation and doesn't realize that's a weapon, I don't trust their opinion. And this goes to show you that Lue Elizondo is compromised. He may be saying the truth on other stuff, but when it comes to the weaponry and technology, he's 100% compromised. He's abiding by his NDA, and he won't speak about anything weapon related. So this is where it becomes misleading for people. And this is why people are like, oh, well, he's lying. He kind of is lying, but you got an NDA. He's not willing to break. Fair enough.
Unlike before in the Cold War, I believe there's a faction of people inside the government that do want this conversation to occur. But equally, there's still a faction of people that are very mad with me. They do not want me having this conversation. And mark my words, just by me being on your show, it is going to cause an absolute storm inside the Pentagon. And I am sure
no chance is causing a storm inside the Pentagon. This isn't even moving the needle. No offense to Lue Elizondo, but he's completely out of touch with social media and how all this stuff works. He thinks he's going to be attacked for this. There's nothing new he's saying here. He's not showing anybody anything that's compelling. Like, the reason why I got attacked is because I'm going, look at these videos. This is hard evidence. And there's a plane that was missing. And here's all the hard evidence for it as well. That's why you attack someone. Nobody's afraid of the stories here. And for the record, guys, he's not LARPing this. He's not role playing. In a sense, he kind of is role playing because he's playing up what he's doing much more important than it really is. Like, this is all the same stories UFO people and even random like low-level UFOologists have been saying the stuff that he's been saying. And no offense to the UFO community. I think the low-level people are the people that I respect the most. The people at the top of this UFO community, I think they're all controlled for the most part. So, but again, it's not that he's LARPing. He's not lying about all these interactions that he's had. He's just not willing to tell the full truth, which is, in a sense, it's a way of lying by omission.
Or the other shoe is going to drop. I promise you, you're going to hear all sorts of stuff. People make stuff up about me trying to discredit this topic. Because
I also think that, like, when it comes to social media, like, his interactions on social media are so awkward. He's terrible at social media. It's like, just be yourself instead of being like a super like sensitive and like self-conscious like person. Like, a lot of these social media people are so self-conscious. They're so worried about who they're going to offend and what people think about them. You're never going to be successful in social media or even in life if you care that much about what other people think of you. You're always going to have haters. Always. I still have haters. You just ignore them, bro. Just ignore them. You're on Joe Rogan. The haters have nothing on you. I never think about the haters, ever, not for 1 minute in my day.
Because as many people are in the government that want this topic to be discussed now, there's still some people that do not want this conversation.
Could you steel man their position?
And this is another Joe Rogan with another great question. Honestly, God, man, I wish Joe Rogan, like, if I go on him, I'd be like, hey, go to your Lue Elizondo video. Ask me all the same questions you asked Lue Elizondo. Steelman the government, steelman the people's position who want it hidden. Okay, Joe, easy. It's doomsday. It's the end of the world. It's very possible that with this technology, we can create a black hole, and it may even be real that, or may even be true that black holes that we see out there are actually produced by civilizations who destroyed themselves. Because basically any civilization that gets a black hole weapon, pretty good chance they're just going to destroy themselves. And you go, oh, yeah, that's damn, that's pretty damn dark, right? And that's a good reason to hide it. Really good reason. And then the other one you go is, well, Joe, when I was exposed to this information, people told me they would fucking kill themselves if this was true. I'm like, well, shit. Okay, people are literally going to jump off a bridge if it turns out this is real. So now you've got doomsday weapon, and a percentage of your populace is going to just check out. They're just going to rage quit. They're done. That's it. Those are two really, really good reasons to not disclose the information. Let's see what he has to say.
Say again.
Steelman their position, meaning could you argue it from their perspective?
Absolutely.
Like why?
Sure.
What would be a good reason to keep this stuff quiet?
Sure. And I want to preface here, I'm not fear mongering.
No, I don't think you are.
Look, if I was a military person, right, I would look at this from the perspective of there's three options. They're good, they're neutral, or they're bad. So let's go down this road for a second. Let's say they're good, right? Well, we got nothing to worry about. The problem is there's nothing to suggest that they truly are benevolent. People say, well, they're like, they don't want us to nuke ourselves. Well, I discuss it.
I already talked about this. I'm going to skip over this. His arguments make no sense. Okay, they're good. Okay, great. So we should just tell people. If they're neutral, also we should just tell people if there's like a roaming giant on our planet that's just walking around trampling things and it just doesn't care. We should just tell people that. Why would we hide that? If they're evil, we definitely shouldn't hide it. If there's an evil beings keeping us held prisoner on this planet, we're their food, we should tell people that so we can prepare to fight back against them. And his argument here is basically like, they're evil, and if they find out we know about them, they're going to wipe us out. What? How does that make any sense? We do know about them, and you're talking about it on a podcast right now. Like, I don't get this idea that, if they become so self-aware, they're just going to come and wipe us out. Although there is this Gurren Lagann theory that is somewhat similar to this, which I do think is possible. That like an advanced AI basically keeps us suppressed. And the moment we achieve a certain level of technological advancement where we are a threat, they come in and just reset us back down to zero. And the reason why they do this is because you can never truly eradicate the problem. So instead, you basically like pulling out the weeds. The weeds are going to come back up again, but we're going to just pull them out. So this is the part where I don't know if he's lying, but I just don't think he really gets it, or maybe he's not allowed to talk about certain aspects of it. And this is also when he says stuff like this makes me question his whole understanding of like why it's non-human intelligence. Because I don't think any of these people have ever seen an alien firsthand. Lue Elizondo hasn't seen an alien. Jeremy Corbell hasn't seen an alien. Ross Kohler, none of these people have seen aliens. They're just going based on the information that makes sense in their heads. And in Lue Elizondo's heads, it makes sense that they are keeping us enslaved. And for some reason, that's why we're not telling people about it. Doesn't make any sense to me, but makes sense to him. And this is why I keep an open mind to it, because I can't evaluate what the situation is unless I have perfect information. And I don't, not even close, especially on the alien stuff.
In what I wrote, that.
Okay, so we're going to skip to no one's going to be held accountable for this. So what they start talking about here is like, how do we get this out? Can we like give like amnesty to the people? And it's actually a lot more complicated than I thought. Like if we are hiding aliens, it becomes really sketchy.
100%. There's
people that would be liable for not being straightforward with Congress.
And I know people want their pound of flesh. I know there's people out there, we've been lied to for decades, and
and then they make it a political issue, and they go after someone for And
I think that's the wrong approach. I think there was a time where we needed to keep this secret, and I think what you do is you give those guys awards, give those guys and gals awards who did it. Don't make them enemies, make them friends, and say, okay, look, but those were different times. Now is the time to come clean. Talk to the members of Congress.
Forgive all the past sins.
Truth and reconciliation.
And this is a good argument. Like this is actually, I agree with him until you realize we teleported a fucking aircraft, civilian airliner. There's no going to Congress and be like, well, I signed off on us sort of teleporting an aircraft to Diego Garcia because there were some semiconductor scientists on it, and we didn't want China to get this technology. There's no, like, that's much bigger than just amnesty. First of all, the U.S. citizens aren't going to care, but China's going to be like, whoa, you stole our aircraft? Sorry, that's really racist, but we're going with it. I hope I don't get canceled over that. But yes, we stole their aircraft, and you can't just, there's no amnesty for that. Like, this is like much darker. We've done some sketchy shit that the world is not ready to accept. And this is part of the reason why the UFO people are afraid of what I'm talking about. Because, like, this is not just aliens and anti-gravity technology. It's also like, oh, by the way, the government's evil. There might be like a super evil like subset of the government that has God tier technology, and they're just doing whatever they want, teleporting civilian airliners of foreign nations, and there's nothing anybody else can do about it. You're like, oh, okay. This is a lot darker than I was expecting.
To prosecution,
100%.
And let's just get clear with all this and understand that it was all in good faith that you did it in the first place.
100%. Now,
all in the
it was all in good faith, man. Like, I can't wait till the politicians where Barack Obama's in a courtroom and he's got to go, it was in good faith when I teleported MH370 to the Maldives and we lied to the world about it. And we won't release any information about it. And everybody's so stupid. They thought that planes crashed without leaving debris fields. And the United States doesn't have a massive surveillance apparatus. There's no good faith, man. We're well past good faith on some of this.
Just the United States security.
You talk about legal issues. The problem is there are, though, real legal issues. So let's say you have.
Okay, so this part is actually really insightful. And this is the stuff that tells me, like, Lue is probably a white hat. You know, Lue is one of the good guys in disclosure. He wants disclosure out. Okay. And I don't like to say good and bad because it gets a lot more gray than that, honestly. Like, we've looked at both sides and I'm actually somewhere in the middle in all this. But he's somebody that he wants the information out and he knows some of, especially when it comes to this, like the more intel side of the stuff he knows. So what he's about to say right here is that if you give one company an advantage, like you go, hey, Lockheed Martin, here, you can have the sport model UFO thing that we knocked down. We don't know how it works. Go figure it out. Well, you're about to become a multi-billion-dollar company because we gave you that. Well, what about the one that failed over here, the unknown companies? They didn't get a UFO. What are they going to do? They're going to sue the government and Lockheed Martin for unfair practices. That's a big problem. That's a real legal liability problem.
Again, these cups, forgive my analogies. You have two aerospace companies, Company A, Company B. And let's say I am in the Department of Defense back in the 50s, 60s, and I come across this interesting technology. I have no idea what the hell it is. It just came out of the sky. And I go to Company A and I said, tell me what you can figure out about that, right?
Right.
10 years later, Company A becomes a multi-billion-dollar aerospace company. Company B goes bankrupt, 200 people lose their jobs, and now people who have stock, investors in that company, lose their money, right? Unfair advantage. Keep in mind, you're supposed to have fair competition in the U.S. government. So if you give an unfair advantage to Company A to B, you're talking a serious liability.
There you go. Fiduciary irresponsibility as well. So the problem is it's not just criminal activity from the perspective of like kidnapping a plane full of people. There's a huge amount of civil liability based on what the United States government did because we basically played favorites. And the worst part is we lied about it for decades. Not only did we just like play favorites like one time, we're still doing it now. We're basically playing favorites with the defense contractors. And then this is the problem, because what does that do? That creates a mafia. That creates a literal mafia of people that everybody in the know, if you're in that group, of this group of people they've been playing favorites with them, that's the elite. Those are the elite. The people that are connected to that group, the people that are the investors that know, the high tier investors, the people that are like the board of directors and the various people that like know the operations of the company and they know this criminal activity is happening. Those people, and then the politicians and the people that have signed off on all the contracts that knew as well. Any of those people that know, they're all liable. And like, this is where it becomes, you're like, oh shit, this amount of liability is in the trillions now. It's huge.
SEC violations there. There's all sorts of concerns one has to pay attention to because someone somewhere gave an unfair advantage to one company over another. So there are legal liabilities that we have to recognize. It's not just clear cut. Okay, forgive and forget. There's going to have to be some additional protection. And
he's basically just advocating for an amnesty where like all this criminal activity and stuff is just forgiven. Like, yeah, Lockheed Martin, yeah, you're worth $1 trillion, but yeah, like all these other people and company and lives were ruined, but yeah, sure. And that's not even talking about like and then you're those companies. So you're one of the companies in the mafia. You're going to use the money that you've gotten to stop people like me and other people that have come out. You don't want competition. You don't want those people to figure it out. So this is where like you literally create an elite group of people that's like the private military defense contractors, anybody that gets a lot of money from the government, maybe the oil, maybe like some energy people as well, right? Like that, these energy companies are probably in on this. So like and maybe the telecoms, all these big ones are the ones where it's like, oh, we've got a bigger problem than just the government here. Okay, 122. This is about evolving.
Wrong at first.
Well, we exist. And we do send things to other planets. We do send things into space. It only makes sense that something far more intelligent than us that would be doing that. And if they did, they'd probably watch an emerging civilization, which is essentially what we are, right? In like you said, 200,000 years, which is nothing. The existence of Homo sapiens. They've gone from things that use stones and flint map to things that can fly things through the air. I mean, if you look at Orville Wright and Wilbur Wright when they flew the first airplane, you go from that to the Apollo 11 launch. That's only like, what, 50 years?
That's right.
Something crazy like that?
And people thought that Wright brothers were crazy trying to fly. They thought flying was impossible. You guys have to realize, like, we thought telephones were impossible. People made fun of people that thought you could carry voice through wires. They thought flying was impossible. They thought that the birds can only do that. It's not possible for humans to do. And now we go, yes, anti-gravity, gravity manipulation, space-time manipulation is possible. And the same idiots say the same thing. It's not possible. Physics says it's not possible. Everything in the world was impossible until it immediately became provable and impossible.
That's right.
That's nuts. Right. And you just take that and everything moves exponentially. You take that and you would imagine a civilization that's been around 10,000 years longer than us, 100,000 years longer, 1,000,000 years longer than us, something that doesn't exist.
How about 100 years? We have evolved more in the last.
And this discussion here, I'm going to skip past some of this, but like, first of all, School for Ants, Zoolander reference, wonderful, beautiful. Here's like, we don't even need 1,000,000 years to advance. Just imagine a civilization is only 100 years more advanced than us. Even 100 years at our pace, you look at how far we advance, like it's going to be a lot of advancement. So 1,000 years is like your God tier technology at that point. You're talking about manipulating stuff at the atomic level, right? We're talking about metamaterials. We're talking about free energy for sure. We're talking about AIs maybe controlling the world, literally. The files are in the computer. If you guys haven't seen Zoolander, you need to watch it. Are you kidding? I already told you. Are you kidding? I just told you. Yeah. Okay. Now I think he says something about Elon Musk here.
We live in this little tiny sliver, and so
you hurt my head. Well, yeah, we live in a tiny sliver, and the idea that we're alone, I think, is preposterous. I really do. And I know people, they constantly chime in with this. So where's the evidence? If Elon's famously said, if the aliens are real, they're very subtle. I don't know why he says that, though. I think he probably says that because he doesn't want to sound like a kook while he's working with NASA and SpaceX. I'd probably say some stuff like that too.
Well,
why is Elon saying that? Why is Elon Musk, out of all people on this planet, being like, we don't see any aliens? It's such a weird offbeat response for his personality. Elon Musk's personality makes no sense when it comes to the topic of aliens. And it makes no sense. This guy owns the biggest rocket company. He's open-minded. He smokes weed. And when I show 2 videos of actual warp drive in a wormhole and all the scientific papers, he's not interested at all. He actually seems like he's actively avoiding my content and interacting with me. which the only reason why I could think somebody would do that at his big of a presence is he doesn't want to send too much attention my way. Because the more people that look at me, the more people are going to follow this content and figure it out. Which all leads back to one thing. Elon Musk has NDAs. Elon Musk knows about these orbs. He knows about spy satellites that we have. And he has the same problem Lue Elizondo has here. He can't talk about surveillance. And he can't talk about weaponry. And he can't talk about any of that stuff that basically means Elon Musk has to say, I haven't seen any aliens. And I think he's being coy. And what he's saying is he hasn't seen any little green men walking around. They're 100% seeing, they're seeing orbs for sure. Ketamine? I think there's an E at the end of that. I love the paint your nails emoji, by the way. When used correctly, paint your nails is
as
great.
human beings, right? How many times do we fly over the Serengeti in a helicopter, right? And let's say we want to monitor the health of a particular.
I'm going to skip this, but basically here he starts talking about like Star Trek with like the non-intervention clause. And he basically says, like, if you were to go down and abduct a animal and then bring it back, like, and that animal goes back to its herd, nobody's going to believe it. Sure. Fair enough. Marius, but why male models? Okay. Next clip. There's like 3 more clips or something. 2 more clips. 3 more. No, just 2 more. 138. The conversation kind of dies off a little bit.
Counter argument to that is that's a very human thing, right? We have, as humans, we always, it's almost innate. We look at everything through anthropomorphic eyes. We look at, our pet dogs and we give them human names and we do things like that because we assign human value to things because we have intentions and motivations. But most of nature isn't that way. Like, for example, when a shark bites a surfer, he's not wanting to hurt the surfer. He's just hungry. The shark's hungry. I don't care if you're a seal or whatever. I'm not trying to inflict pain. I just want to feed my belly. Intent and motivation is a very human thing. And we have to, I don't want to say resist the urge because it's almost impossible to do it, but we have to recognize that there are things that may exist that don't have human motivation, meaning
right.
Maybe they don't care about sensitizing us. Maybe they do, but maybe it's like a computer, right? Maybe it's binary. Maybe there's some sort of binary thought process, just information in and information out. So that's the one of the aspects I've always been very careful with is to assign human traits to something that is very likely not human.
Right. But would you have to assign human traits to it, or would you have?
So I totally agree with Lue Elizondo there as well. And if you guys watched me from the beginning back in August, one of the things I used to say all the time is you can't ascribe human thought process to a non-human intelligence or to an animal. So it's like when people are like, it's aliens zapping the plane, you're like, why the fuck are aliens teleporting a commercial aircraft? Makes no sense at all. Because it's on fire? Are they rescuing it? You're assigning human motivations. This is what a lot of people who are experiencers, I think, do incorrectly, is that, and it goes to show what they're really looking for is a connection, which is fair. We're all looking for connections in this world. But you'll find that they always ascribe human motivations to their abductors and to their captors and to their experiences. When in reality, if there's an alien being out there, if it's neutral or evil, it doesn't give a shit about us. The reason why it hasn't destroyed us or stomped us out is because it's just going about its day. We're just little ants to them. They can destroy us anytime they want. They can destroy us in 1,000 years if they want. Maybe time doesn't even matter to them. We have to look at it completely differently. If we are really dealing with a non-human intelligence that was not started on this earth, might not even have the same perception of time that we have. So there's a lot of things that people need to think about in terms of, like, if you want to go into the non-human intelligence stuff, got to keep an open mind on what it can really be and not try to make it all about what it is with humans. But that's why I think that a lot of this technology we see is humans. It just is humans. That's why. Aliens don't need watches, confirmed. 100%. Ant farm. Yep. Okay. Somebody said go to, what was it, 38 minutes? Is that something? What, I missed it. 38 minutes. This is what Lou was going through his mind. Okay. I'm going to go back for just a second and check that out because I don't think I played 38 minutes. Because there's only one more.
Right. Now, what it is, where it's from and all that stuff, I'm not sure we're quite ready to go there yet. But the acknowledgement is, hey, man, yeah, this is real. It's not ours. And we probably should do something about it.
So if we go back to the history of the debunking of it, you know, like the Project Blue Book stuff, JM.
Well, I'm not going to go through all that, but so the claiming it's not us. Like a big part of this not us stuff, it goes back to what we saw with John Ramirez in the CIA. None of these people are briefed in any of this. It's compartmentalized so much that Lue Elizondo wouldn't even know. If it was Lockheed Martin's technology, Lue Elizondo's not going to know. So this is why I think that a lot of these guys like Jeremy Corbell and Lue Elizondo, some of these guys, like, and everybody who thinks that it can't be humans, they always think, well, these people would know, but these people wouldn't even necessarily know if it was us. And if that's the case, and we should be able to advance this far right now, you can't really just blame everything on aliens at that point. Like, we maybe could have figured it out. It's not, and people think, oh, well, it's beyond the understanding of humans as well. This science is we just can't comprehend it. That's also not true. We absolutely can comprehend this science. In fact, it's all the peer-reviewed papers are already out there. Hal Puthoff and Eric Davis are the ones you mentioned earlier. This is why what he's saying is a little bit inconsistent. Doesn't really make a lot of sense. Because if you've talked to the engineers, and these engineers have already said they've explained it, and they work for third-party defense contractors as contractors, what do you mean they haven't figured it out? You know we have figured it out. It's more just a question of how far back does it go? And then he talks about ball. They also talk about ball lightning too, guys. Like, it's just definitely troll, super troll. Respect to my work.
And in his logbook, something about some interest. Now, some folks will come back and say, "Well, that's St. Elmo's fire," which absolutely could be. You know,
What is St. Elmo's fire exactly?
St. Elmo's fire is a static charge. It occurs on the wingtips.
Okay, I'm going to go back a little bit further because I think we missed it. It's maybe like here.
A static charge. It occurs on the wingtips of aircraft. Even the old sailors would report it. In certain.
Okay, yeah, sorry.
Is now. I mean,
absolutely.
Go swimming with a great white shark and tell me that's not a monster, right?
Exactly.
So, you know, we just realize, though, it's just part of nature. It's part of our existing paradigm.
Right. Tigers are monsters.
Right. Absolutely.
Exactly.
You know, especially at night when you don't have a flashlight, that thing behind the bush, that's a monster.
Right.
You know,
right.
So.
Did you find anything on the Columbus stuff?
The only thing I'm seeing is from my Ancient Aliens episode.
No, you know it's legit.
Okay, so they were talking about like Columbus supposedly saw some orbs, and this goes back to the point earlier about if it goes that far back, it can't be us. Because I mean, we were rocking around on like boats and shit like that, but it doesn't mean it can't be like a splinter race of humans that, you know, has super advanced technology.
I saw something crashed into the water, but I can't find.
Yeah, there were some reports of some interesting lights that the crew had reported, and it was actually, he put it down in his logbook, something about some interest. Now, some folks will come back and say, "Well, that's St. Elmo's fire," which absolutely could be. You know,
what is St. Elmo's fire exactly?
St. Elmo's fire is a static charge. It occurs on the wingtips of aircraft. Even the old sailors would report it. In certain environmental conditions, there was this weird greenish blue plasma glow that will often sometimes be seen on the tips of wing tips on aircraft. It's actually, there's some really good pictures of it online, and even on the old mariner ships up towards the sails and the masts. And they believe it has to do with static charge, and under certain environments, it creates this energized plasma, and you can see it. And so,
is that similar to like ball lightning?
Well, it could be. Here you go. So, and they call it St. Elmo's fire.
Third time tonight, chat. They just start talking about ball lightning. I mean, come on, guys. We are so far ahead of the game on this. Like, ball lightning's only been in the zeitgeist for like a few years. And now Lue Elizondo's like going out of his way to talk about it on Joe Rogan.
Oh,
see that?
Fucking.
So you want to know exactly? We did a whole episode on exotic vacuum objects, guys, like last week.
Badass.
Yeah, and so that's it's either around the cockpit of the aircraft.
Whoa!
And by the way, you see the patterns; it's fractal, right? Look at that ship. So
fractal?
Very, very interesting how St. Elmo's fire, you know, can cause some people to, you know, perhaps see things and say it's.
Well, also they might be seeing that. Yeah,
they might, right? But there is some accounts of ancient mariners who report strange, bizarre things.
Yeah.
So for people out there, when they talk about ball lightning, they're not literally talking about a ball of lightning. They're talking about a ball of plasma. That's what they're talking about. And we call it ball lightning because it looks like what you would imagine a ball of lightning to look like. We have no other, when you don't even understand the fourth phase of matter of plasma, then you can't possibly call something a ball of plasma, right? You don't have a word for it. This is why they called it ball lightning. It's really exotic vacuum objects. And under the right conditions, on the right pressure, you can have a situation with the right charges where you have plasma being formed there, a fusion even potentially beginning. And this is really the basis for cold fusion, low energy nuclear reactions. And now we're just trying to control it. So there's your Discord invite. Let's keep going.
Again, it makes sense. That was one of the more weird parts of Bob Lazar's story, was that they've always been here and that they view us as containers.
Containers, interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't care about this container stuff. So that's where we're going to stop that part. But what I will say is he talks about Bob Lazar, and Lue Elizondo's like, I haven't even like heard of Bob Lazar's stuff, which I thought was really weird response, dude. How can you be Lue Elizondo talking about UFOs on Joe Rogan and not have any idea of Bob Lazar's claims? What? I don't believe that for a second. That's probably the weirdest claim that Lazar or that Elizondo made. What I will say is, from my research, it feels like Bob Lazar is not lying when he talks about this stuff. He's consistent in what he says. But the element 115 thing, no. We don't need any element 115 for gravity effects. You don't need that. I'm 100% sure you don't need that. Now, it doesn't mean that it's not a possibility. Like, there might be a situation where some element does, some, element that Moscovium or whatever they call it now, maybe it can, in the right circumstances, produce an anti-gravitational effect, but it's not required. No way. It's not required. And that's the thing where it's like, I don't know then if he's all telling the truth. This container soul thing, there was somebody that posted, I think it was the EBO scientist. The EBO scientist post on Reddit claimed also this thing about souls and them being our bodies being containers, and like the whole point being our soul to advance. I like that idea. It makes a lot of sense, but it's really an unsubstantiated claim that can't be proven either way. So, okay, guys, that's my overall review of the interview between Joe Rogan and Lue Elizondo. As a summary, I did enjoy it. I thought there's a lot of very, very similar things to what I've been saying regarding the science and the technology and the reasons for suppression. But there's a tinge on Lue Elizondo's statements based on the fact that he has an NDA and he can't talk about surveillance capabilities or weapon capabilities. And a lot of this stuff goes back to both of those things. But I think that Joe Rogan did a good job asking him the kind of questions that we want to be asking him. I think that people need to start. The fact that he's not connecting free energy to this as well is also a little bit troubling. I think that anybody that understands the physics, I hate to say correctly because it's egotistical, but let's say in the way that this makes sense, you have to come to the conclusion that free energy is possible. That's the logical conclusion. If we can extract and squeeze energy like this, then free energy is just obviously possible, because whenever you remove energy from somewhere, it has to increase somewhere else. I technically signed an NDA, but I don't have an NDA with the government. If I break my NDA, nobody gets killed. Nobody gets silenced. All I do is maybe lose a little bit of money. It's not really holding anything back. The reason why I honor NDA is because I respect the people that I signed the NDA with. That's the reason. That's the real reason, guys. I don't have an NDA where I'm going to go to prison. Like, keep in mind, Lue Elizondo's NDA, he goes to prison if he talks about this stuff. Like, he gets Edward C. Lind. They take his pension. He goes to prison. They ruin his life. His family is screwed. So that's the difference, guys. If I sign an NDA, you're just not going to see me anymore. Just not going to talk anymore. What was Emily saying? We are beautiful little Tupperware box containers. You have good takes, Emily. I appreciate it. Yeah, and Lue Elizondo loves his daughter, guys. So this is the part 2. Thank you very much, Bernie. Like the stream, guys, although we are closing out. These people have families, man. And you have to look at it from their perspective. Don't look at it from your perspective as a greedy human. Look at it from their perspective as somebody who's just trying to put food on the table and support their family and keep them safe. So I understand why he's being dishonest in terms of, or like, it's not dishonest, but not forthcoming with information. That's great. But, I'm not that way. So it's wrecking ball, catastrophic disclosure time, chat. Thank you, everybody. Have a great night. Appreciate you all. Play us out with our favorite. Have a good one.
In the fields where the skies are wide, talking about a journey through the cosmic ride. Einstein and Thorne, they set the stage for a trip through time across the space age. Wormholes connect distant points in space, traversable paths to a far-off place. No black holes pull, no crushing weight, just a cosmic tunnel to a distant gate.
Talking wormholes, stargates, negative energy, travel through the cosmos, it's our destiny. MH370, where did it go? Bowling 777 through a wormhole flow. We're talking wormholes, stargates, negative energy, travel through the cosmos, it's our destiny. MH370, where did it go? Bowling 777 through a wormhole flow.
Exotic matter, negative energy's the key to stabilize the wormhole for you and me. Quantum vacuum squeezed so tight, creating conditions for this wondrous flight. Static fields and lasers in the lab they play, generating forces in a new kind of way. Gravitational squeezing, Casimir's force, negative zones we need to stay the course.
Talking wormholes, stargates, negative energy, travel through the cosmos, it's our destiny. MH370, where did it go? Boeing 777 through a wormhole flow.
Thin shell formalism plates so fine, spherical geometry we realign. Energy conditions that we must defy. For a stable wormhole, let's give it a try. Forces balancing the plates, creating the throat, open the gates, from Earth to the stars in a single bound, a shortcut through space profound. Engineers and dreamers hold the key to future worlds and what we could be. With science in hand, we forge ahead through the cosmic paths that we now tread.
We're talking wormholes, stargates, negative energy, travel through the cosmos, it's our destiny. MH370, where did it go? Boeing 777 through a wormhole flow.
From the fields to the stars, we break the chains. Understanding the universe, we make the gains. Lil Hula Crunk shines, bringing truth to light. Through his music, we'll explore the night. With wormholes and stargates, our path is clear. Exploring the cosmos, our future's here.